Chapter 333, Meeting in the City, Part 2-3. Translator, Strivon. It was now 9:15 in the morning. The second round of morning classes at Acumen College had already begun, and the students in the area were more or less in class. The students were stuck on campus as their energy sapped away. The streets of the large activity area were more desolate than usual, with only the occasional car flying past on the low-altitude magnetic rails extending off into the distance. The Pingjiang district of Acumen College could compete for the throne of having the average lowest building heights within Xia City. There was the super-tall building complex Cloud City Water Village in the center, but this made the surroundings appear even shorter and flatter. The crow flapped its wings, and it skillfully made its way through the gaps between buildings. It soon locked onto the entrance to an underground parking lot. It took advantage of a pedestrian's lack of attentiveness, and it flew in, practically sticking to the ceiling. It spiraled left and right as it flew in, and soon it reached the underground third floor. It found its final target in the middle of several hundred parked cars. Amidst the sound of the fluttering of flapping wings, the crow dropped onto the rooftop of a common SUV. It knocked with its jet-black talons, and the sunroof opened up to swallow the bird inside. The inside of the car was filled with the fragrance of beef. In the driver's seat, a thick, muscular man held a bag of roasted meat fresh out of the oven. He ate using his hands, stuffing the pieces of meat into his mouth. The massive crow entered the car. When it collected its wings, it smacked the man's skull. The man didn't even raise his head. He was engrossed in eating. The man's skin flushed red, something that was commonly seen among Caucasians. However, the man was Asian, so this gave off a feeling of abnormality. A mass of a beard, like that of an artist's, grew beneath the man's chin. It was fixed to his face, making him appear rather boorish. The crow looked at this fellow inquisitively. Then it stood up in the shotgun seat, its claws hooking onto the seat. It stood quite steadily. Its enormous body exceeded 70 centimeters in height. As it stood in the front seat, it was no different in height from a normal person sitting down. After swallowing the chunk of meat down his throat, the man turned to look at the crow. He locked gazes with the crow's pitch-black pupils and went, "Oh." He rummaged around in the car with an extended hand and found a box. He tilted his bag of food, looking like he was about to dump the contents into the box. "Did you eat yet? I'll give you some if you're hungry." Yep, the man must be of the same trade. Otherwise, why would he treat a crow this way? This enormous crow was none other than Luo Nan's pet. It was also Luo Nan's earliest believer, Ink. Right now, Ink shared its sight with Luo Nan. Luo Nan could even control Ink, and he had Ink shake its head. "Not going to eat? Well, forget it." The man crammed another chunk of meat into his mouth and chewed viciously. Then he picked up a rubber band-shaped object from the control console and played with it using his fingers, revealing its toughness and elasticity. It shone with a luster of mauve. It was utterly eye-catching. "Lift your leg." Luo Nan was very cooperative as he gave the order to Ink. Ink hopped and lifted a claw askew in the air. The man used 2 fingers to pull the rubber band open and put it on Ink's lower leg. The band immediately bound back, and the band wouldn't fall since talons were in the way. Ink's lower leg was now lined with a purplish-red circle. It was really eye-catching. Luo Nan felt Ink's sensations and knew that the band didn't have much influence, if any. The man's voice came out indistinctly as he ate meat. "This little thing is specially made. It's a communications device, very easy to use. It's quite suitable for you mental-focused folks. You'll know once you try it. He had bound a communications device on Ink's leg. Luo Nan infused the object with his mental power. No reaction. Then he subtly interfered with the material plane, immediately stirring a key mechanism. The rubber band trembled slightly, sending out the corresponding signal. Hello, hello. There wasn't any sound in the car, but the middle-aged man in the driver's seat tapped his earlobe. I can hear you. So that was how to use it. It was indeed very convenient and effortless. Luo Nan reckoned that he could have achieved the same result of external communication by relying on his previous interference power, which lacked his understanding in the coupling technique, and merely allowed him to blow scraps of paper. Luo Nan only had a single question right now, and he used the communications rubber band to ask, "Isn't this a bit roundabout? We can just use the hexaware." Luo Nan still remembered that the last time he and Crag burst mobilized together, the two communicated unhindered on the psychic wave network using the hexaware. They also seamlessly accessed the large operation of the society. There wasn't a need to start a completely new channel of communications, right? That's you guys' communications network. My connections are insufficient. Besides, your partner hasn't entered the society either, so that's why. Partner, then you. What's your name, sir? My last name is Jin. Sir Jin. Fourth tone, the Jin Chinese letter from putting together gay Chinese letter and Jin Chinese letter. You can just call me Old Jin. In any case, I'm a driver. Luo Nan felt that this man was a bit moody. Perhaps his situation was similar to worker Xia's. They were people within the circle, but they weren't awakened. They harbored some emotions of jealousy, and this was very normal. In any case, the Hidden Indigo Firm where Zhang Yingying works and the Martial Empress is reportedly the boss of had hired this man. He was an employee. Luo Nan needn't be worried about related psychological constructs. These theatrics set up by Zhang Yingying made Luo Nan hide himself in the background. He attached his soul to his crow for some scouting. There was nothing that could be criticized from the aspect of safety. But in the end, he was still pulling the wool over people's eyes in a situation where cooperation was needed. Luo Nan originally thought that the muscular old driver in front of him was to be his future partner for some time. However, it seemed that his partner was some other person. The window rapped with noise during his pondering. Old Jin unlocked the doors, and someone opened a back door to sit in the back row. She wore a wide-brimmed hat, while shadow obstructed half of her face. She looked quite mysterious. She leaned back after sitting down. The movements of her limbs were rather lax. Old Jin, my partner, a rook with a height of 70 centimeters. A giant. The one in the back had swept her gaze onto Ink riding shotgun, and she immediately let out an exclamation of admiration. A normal rook would have a height of around 50 centimeters at maturity. Ink's body far exceeded that. Such information could be easily found on the internet, but this person was able to distinguish the species of crow with a glance. She understood the pertinent field of knowledge through and through. She ought to be an enthusiast or a professional. The person took off her wide-brimmed hat as she spoke. Her black hair dropped down like a waterfall, contouring a bright and beautiful face full of vitality. Her face seemed to light up the dim car. Yes, it was a woman. She looked young, around 20 years old. Her skin was the healthy color of olive, but her skin tone wasn't dark. Instead, her skin shone with the bright luster of life. Capturing the description accurately, her skin was filled with collagen, expressing an abundance of vitality. She casually bound her hair into a ponytail. Luo Nan could see that she was quite tall. She just straightened her back, and her head nearly touched the roof of the car. Her form-fitting hunting clothes stretched tight during this, causing her figure to appear all the more curvaceous. "Old Jin, I'm not late, right? Depends on how fast the car goes." Old Jin made a simple reply, then poured the rest of the roasted beef into his mouth. His cheeks bulged as he chewed viciously. He knocked against the control console, and the car started up in AI mode to speed out of the underground parking lot. Luo Nan was stupefied at such a bold eating style. Then the beauty sitting in the back reached out with a hand, and Luo Nan subconsciously got the feeling that she wanted to shake hands in greeting. He was about to order Ink to extend a wing in response, but the beauty had already tapped Ink on the head. Then she started rubbing Ink's head. "This crow's not bad. Oh, or should I say spirit bird, familiar or servant? Which one sounds better? Peony also carries a communications device. You two can talk directly." Old Jin's voice was hard to make out, but he gave Luo Nan an introduction. "Peony." Luo Nan stirred the rubber band to give it a try. "Hi, Mr. Crow, hello." "Hello to you too. In any case, Miss Peony, it would be better if you could stop pressing against Ink's skull. This giant's name is Ink. That's easy to remember. It will be easier to call out later. Also, don't add a miss. Peony is my code name. You can just call me by it. Then you can just call me Crow." According to what Zhang Yingying said, everyone participating in the operation didn't know his true identity, and this included his partner. This was, of course, another safety measure, one that Luo Nan accepted. Peony laughed. She had very beautiful eyes and very long eyelashes. The skin under her eyes was very youthful and plump, the color of which was very bright and full of moisture. Her eyes curved into exquisite moon-like arcs when she laughed. It was very attractive. "Sure thing, I'll leave the Mr. to Ink. Mr. Ink, that has quite the ring to it." Hearing people say its name over and over, Ink inexplicably awakened with self-awareness. It opened its mouth to voice out in a sound that was inevitably hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. "So he agrees, right?" By now, the ordinary SUV they rode in already cut its way into the high-speed magnetic rails. The driving route would have them spiral into the sky from Cloud City Water Village. As the car changed lanes, the Crow glanced at the skyscrapers reaching through the skies far in the distance. It paid particular attention to Ocean Sky Cloud City right in front. It couldn't see the fine details of the building, but starting a week ago, waves and waves of tourists displayed special interest over the viewing platform of the 142nd floor. They would stay for half a day or even a full day each visit. They didn't just use the viewing scopes atop the platform. They even brought their own equipment to look with delight and joy. These tourists pair off quite nicely with some construction workers at Xia. A lot of different types of data and information came back and forth between them. It could be said the Xia was studied meticulously and thoroughly from the inside out. It was very interesting. From current intelligence, it seemed that the origins of these people were quite complicated. At least 4 or 5 batches of them were from investors. There were conflicts between them, and there was also cooperation. Each of them showed off their schemes, playing with extreme delight. But no matter how openly they fought and how covertly they maneuvered, these people's target was clear. They were all observing and surmising. Were there deeper secrets to the building that was Xia? Could they publish something out of them? So Luo Nan understood that although Gia appeared to be peaceful, it had already sunk into a torrential undercurrent, and it was falling deeper and deeper. The reason for which was still unknown. The stress. The car remained silent like this the entire way, and they arrived at a different underground parking lot 15 minutes later. It should belong to some business hotel downtown. This area was linked to the recycling stratum. Thick walls could be seen at one side as the car made its way down. There were decadent and crazed figures of people wandering around beyond the walls. It was impossible for sight to penetrate the body of the car and the thick walls, but a 30-meter radius of area was all within the scope of Ink's perception. This area turned into a meticulous scene, and the scene was projected into Luo Nan's mind, located several kilometers away. Using pure observation, mental power could penetrate through walls regardless of it coming from Luo Nan himself or his believers. Nothing couldn't be reached. The only thing that was restrictive was the finite range that could be covered. A radius of 30 meters. This was the limit of Ink's natural perception. However, separated by space, Luo Nan could also use various methods of strengthening to expand the range substantially, though temporarily. Luo Nan compared this with other information, and he felt that this ability was quite sufficient. The car accurately parked in the middle of a parking spot, and just ahead was an elevator. Old Jin smacked his lips. He had eaten all the beef completely clean. Well, time to get out. What happens next has nothing to do with me. Chapter 334, Meeting in the City, Part 3-3. Translator, Strivon. Under the urging of Old Jin, the first thing Peony did was get off the car. She put on her wide-brimmed hat, brought her hands to her head to fiddle with her hair, and got her ponytail to come through the back of her hat. She shook her head slightly, giving off a sense of luster and beauty and the dynamic feeling of life. Now Luo Nan was able to confirm that Peony was rather tall. She absolutely had the figure of a model, looking to be in the same category as his cousin Mo Ya. In other words, she had to be taller than 180 centimeters. This caused the youngster, whose real body was barely 170 centimeters, to feel rather pressured. Luckily, he didn't need to reveal himself. Ink hopped out of the window. It extended its wings, did a slight turn, and flew up into the air. Luo Nan saw that the elevator was waiting a floor above, and he used the power of interference to press the button. The elevator's light lit up, and it opened just as Peony arrived in front of it. "Thank you, Mr. Ink." Peony gave a drawn-out laugh, but she had thanked the wrong person. The skin beneath her eyes shone clearer during her smile, carving two crescents, while her eyes seemed to be covered with mist. They were hazy and unclear. This made her appear all the more charming. Peony walked into the elevator as she smiled. She patted her shoulder. "Want to take a break?" Ink already made a decision by itself before Luo Nan could personally express himself. Perhaps Ink felt that the elevator was too cramped, being unable to completely extend its wings. It simply dropped onto Peony's shoulder. "Wow, you're heavy." Whether it was looking at Ink from a species perspective or from a real-life situation perspective, Ink was no doubt a large fellow. Right now, its two claws gripped onto Peony's shoulder. It retracted its wings, putting them away. It would have whacked Peony in the head if it didn't. The elevator went up and soon reached the 50th floor. There was someone waiting at the exit. That person was stunned as he saw Peony, and especially the enormous crow atop her shoulder. It took a while before he approached them and said, "Hello, are you Mrs. Peony of the Hidden Indigo Firm. Peony gave a grunt of agreement, a very sufficient attitude. The receptionist's gaze slowed a bit when it swept across Peony's face. Then his mind inexplicably shivered. He soon judged the cause to be from the crow. Disregard whether or not the crow was bold and imposing. This crow that perched on the beauty's shoulder was leaning forward habitually in its stance. Its height seemed to be bearable, but its tail and body formed a diagonal line. The crow's stance was akin to someone leaning forward with their body, pressing right before the eyes in a deadly glare. The pitch-black eyes were completely fixed. They were eerie, and they were looking more and more uncanny. The receptionist involuntarily took a step back, but realized that he was being impolite. He gave an awkward laugh and shifted to the side. He extended a hand and said, "Please walk this way." Peony nodded and walked into a small conference room ahead. The room was approximately 40 square meters. The tables and chairs placed throughout everywhere, except the center, were oval-shaped. In the center was some device. The device wasn't even on, but there were a lot of people sitting in the chairs. There were about 20 people there. The agreed-upon time was 9:30, and right now it was already 9:32. They were late by 2 minutes, but the conference had yet to begin. It seemed that they weren't the only ones who were late. Seeing Peony come in carrying a giant of a crow, everyone in the room all turned to study them. Peony maintained her polite yet estranged smile. She took on everyone's gazes as she found a place to sit down. She adopted a gaze of curiosity, and her gaze swept over the faces of everyone in the room. She was expressing extreme relaxation with her body language. Ink hopped down from her shoulder and stood atop the desk in front. Under Luo Nan's will, Ink gathered its wings and closed its mouth. It uttered not a sound. It only twisted its head back and forth, and its eyeballs swiveled along. The beauty and the crow shifted their gazes, switching targets in sync and out of sync. One woman, one crow. They blatantly observed the other people in the meeting. In the end, these powerful people somewhat couldn't take it. They broke their gazes away one after another. Originally, there were some people who wanted to get close to the beautiful girl when they first saw her. They wanted to say hello and see what might transpire. However, they dismissed these thoughts one after another, and the atmosphere became awkward. As such, of the 20 or so people in the room, only Peony's expression didn't change from beginning to end. Luo Nan was forced to admire her. He had ink as a shield, with himself being several dozen kilometers away. He had nothing to worry about. However, Peony's performance spelled that of experience. She was calm and composed, unyielding and imposing. It was unknown what kind of work she did at the Hidden Indigo Firm. Luo Nan realized that he was so busy for the past few days to the point of dizziness. He knew very little about his future partner. He was mulling over whether or not he should go ask Zhang Yingying for more information when the door made a sound. Another person came in, who paused a bit before coming over to their side. The newly arrived person simply pulled out the chair that was next to Peony. Then he bowed with a smile. "May I sit here?" "Feel free." Peony tilted her head. She roughly studied the person a little, and she didn't refuse. This person sat next to Peony. He was a young man in casual clothes. His medium-length, curly hair was one of the more striking things about him. They hung to the end of his shoulder, appearing a bit fluffy. His skin tone was extremely white, and he even had an earring in his left ear. Luo Nan was certain that this brother's stylist was absolutely top-notch. Such a hairstyle not only didn't appear effeminate, it enhanced the contours of his facial structure, which seemed to carry a bit of mixed blood. Pairing this with his V-shaped build made it so that he gave off quite an aura of masculinity, kind of like an old European lord. The young man introduced himself after sitting down. "Hello, my last name is Long. I am ranked 7th. My friends call me Long 7. I just joined this group. Allow me the liberty to ask your name." "You can just call me Peony." Peony, Long 7 swept his gaze across Peony's cheeks to land atop her wide-brimmed hat. "I'm guessing that you're a student of Acumen College." Luo Nan ate some shock, but he soon realized that he was getting ahead of himself. From beginning to end, Long 7 was just chatting with Peony. Peony had no ill will toward this handsome person of a mixed race. Her smile burst forth from the corners of her eyes as she asked in rapport, "What's your reasoning?" "Please forgive me for being blunt. Jungle Owl is a non-professional gaming clan made up of students. They just entered the WCG tournament in only one game called 10 Days in the Wilderness. Their achievements aren't much to write home about. Their merchandise is mainly and only consumed in Acumen College." It was only now that Luo Nan noticed that there was a logo in front of Peony's wide-brimmed hat. It was in the shape of an owl. It was probably the logo of the so-called Jungle Owl. "It's not that bad. Jungle Owl has quite good-looking skin. There are tons of fans inside and outside the school." Peony leaned in to the side, using her elbow as support on the table. Her fingertips felt along the edge of her wide-brimmed hat. This casual action made her hat tilt a bit, giving off a bit of an easygoing feeling. Long 7 didn't say anything. Some of the members looking at them had eyeballs nearly bulging out. Next, Peony and Long 7 chatted about esports. It was just that Long 7 knew the styles, members, and accomplishments of the various gaming clans like the back of his hand. On the other hand, Peony was far more interested in the attractiveness of the members of each team, regardless of them being male or female. I really have an appearance complex. Other people look at the live streams while I look at the sidelights, the interviews, and so on." Peony didn't hide her interests at all. She giggled in utter delight. Long 7 was about to speak when he suddenly froze. In the middle of his startled gaze, one of Peony's hands propped up her cheek, while the other hand reached forward. Her long fingers gently brushed across the curls by the side of Long 7's face. It seemed that she even touched his skin. "Of course, you're not bad too." The ambiguous levels were off the charts. The thrill levels were off the charts. Most of the people in the conference room were eavesdropping on and peeking at the conversation between the beauty and the handsome man. When Peony made this move, some people gasped from being caught off guard, while some people's eyes lit up bright with raging flames. The cause of all this was the rampant growth of emotions in the heart. Long 7 instantly recovered from his astonishment. He instinctively reached out, seemingly seeking to grab Peony's probing fingers. But he hesitated a beat. Peony withdrew her delicate fingers without a sound, but she held an earring of lustrous silver between her thumb and index finger. This was none other than the earring that was on Long 7's left ear. Long 7 became serious for the first time upon meeting when he saw the object in Peony's fingers. He said, "Miss Peony. You can just call me Peony." Within this dialogue-provoking déjà vu, Peony's posture remained unchanging. She continued to have her cheek propped up by her arm. She just held the earring between her fingers and studied it in great detail close to her eyes. After a while, she visibly exerted force with her fingers. The fine circular earring didn't react. Long 7's expression turned grave. He was right about to speak, But how was he to know that the beauty before him would extend an arm before his eyes and say, "It's quite a good earring. Is it made of platinum?" Long Seven didn't answer Peony's question. He immediately grabbed the earring and hooked it back on his ear. His tense face softened a bit, but it was impossible for him to return to his previous state of speech and laughter. The atmosphere grew all the more bizarre. Ink could feel all the changes in the atmosphere. It subconsciously flapped its wings, dropping a feather. Peony reached out and held it. She jabbed Ink in the head, all smiles. She played around, minding her own business. She looked like she didn't care at all about Long Seven's change in attitude. What an egotistical woman! Luo Nan had just made this initial judgment when someone else walked into the conference room. This person stood straight in front of the oval table. His eyes swept across the room in a circle before nodding and saying, "Everyone is present. Let the meeting begin." The man who just arrived had a face that already reached old age. He was at least 70 years old, but he stood ramrod straight. He introduced himself with ample energy and a magnificent voice. "I am Trigate Corporation's CEO. My name is Wu Bin. I am also the person in charge of this project and the organizer of this team. I will be the one to coordinate the project's specific actions for the following time period. Among the people sitting, there are 2 professionals worthy of trust. There are also the elite of the company and those who possess powerful strength. I am confident that this preservation operation will achieve satisfactory results." Wu Bin's speech was a bit bureaucratic, but he kept in accordance with the government and military background of Trigate Corporation. His stiff speech didn't represent a rigid mind. Wu Bin was fully aware that the experts he invited were meeting with the team members for the first time. They needed to have an intuitive understanding of each other. He took this chance to call upon one of his subordinates. "Introduce yourselves, starting from you." The subordinate quickly stood up. He was just about to speak when Peony raised her hand from the middle of the table. Her fingers were still playing with the dark blackish-blue crow feather as she said, "Director Wu, the Hidden Indigo Firm wishes for you to first explain the personnel that compose the action team. According to the contract agreed upon by the firm and your company, we should be the only professional consultants and conductors. Where did talk of 2 professionals come from?" Her words shut up the poor subordinate, who was left looking stupidly at Wu Bin. The atmosphere in the conference room entered an even more awkward stage. Chapter 335, Winghand Bloodbat. Translator, Strivon. Wu Bin's brows furrowed slightly under Peony's inquiry, but he immediately presented a smile and said, "It's like this. We received the latest intelligence and saw that some of our targets possess the ability to spray matter that can cause large doses of radiation in a short period of time. These targets also like to live in areas of radiation. Therefore, we specifically invited Mr. Long Seven." Wu Bin extended an arm upon speaking, and Long Seven was very cooperative. He stood up and faced the other people in greeting. His bearing and air were all first class. His smooth and natural body language diluted the awkward atmosphere in the room. Then came the applause. The members of the meeting were really clapping. Wu Bin asked Long Seven to sit down. He continued, "Mr. Long Seven has been recommended by North Hope Corporation. He is an expert, and he possesses the special ability to neutralize radiation. As the world's finest supplier of human resources, North Hope Corporation's acuity is worthy of trust. I myself am also convinced of Mr. Long Seven's professional accomplishments. At the same time, I ask you to believe in the sincerity of our cooperation and our ability to keep our promises." Hearing all this, Luo Nan already formed a rough assessment. This team probably had frequent dealings with ability users. Wu Bin talked of special abilities as natural as drinking water. He also didn't pay particular attention to ink, an odd choice for a pet. He was probably very experienced in the world, not wondering at strange sights. This was quite reassuring. Peony clasped her hands together to form a cup that braced her chin. This made her appear even more focused. Only the light scratching of her face with the crow feather revealed a slightly different kind of interest. Of course, it didn't matter what posture Peony adopted. A beautiful girl looked good in any position. It also dispelled the negative feelings of the others in the room. And just like this, she smiled. "Our firm doesn't doubt your company's power and reputation, but things need to be considered professionally. When scouting and locking onto the target, all matters need to be directed by our firm. This one point cannot be changed because of the team composition, the type of target, the environment, and other reasons." Wu Bin responded immediately. "We won't go back on our word upon the matters stressed in the agreement." Peony switched her gaze to Long Seven's face. "The firm will not take any responsibility for any losses caused by clause-violating actions from the cooperating partners and the members of the team. In such a case, the firm will withdraw from this project and seek compensation." Wu Bin confirmed, "No objections." Long Seven studied Peony from the side. He laughed 2 seconds later and said, "I am providing special service. Mrs. Peony, I have no contradictions with you taking charge of the entire situation. I will certainly comply with the related clauses." Peony smiled as she sat back down. She tossed the feather back onto the table and said, "Then I have nothing else to say." Wu Bin let out a hidden sigh of relief while revealing a grand smile on his face. "Since we are one team, it is best to communicate in a timely fashion. Be like Mrs. Peony and directly point out these things. We can dispel quite a few problems." Though he said these things, he wasn't willing to have Peony talk again. He indicated everyone to begin introducing themselves, and the team members introduced themselves one by one. Soon, it went around in a circle before arriving back at Peony and Long Seven. Long Seven donned an air of a noble, but he took the initiative to introduce himself for the sake of the collective. "Director Wu mentioned just now that he mainly invited me for my radiation neutralization ability. I won't say anything more on this topic. Other than that, I have studied the use of firearms and exoskeleton armors." Peony suddenly interrupted him. "What kind of exoskeleton armor? Military, police, or a deep blue walker?" Long Seven gave a subtle smile. "I can use all of them." "Oh, forgive me." Though Peony said this, she was not the least bit surprised. She casually raised her hand, indicating that it was now her turn to introduce herself. "As you all can see, my special ability is being able to control birds for reconnaissance of a wide area and perform some information integration analysis of the work. However, it seems like there's already an intelligence officer on the team." Wu Bin immediately made himself known. "We will certainly get the coordination done well. Axel Thew is mainly responsible for liaison and intelligence sharing. He is a very good assistant." Intelligence Officer Axel Thew, who had already introduced himself, stood back up once more to send his greetings to Peony. He didn't sit back down, though. Instead, he followed Wu Bin's intentions and began introducing the specifics of the operation. This briefing wasn't just for Peonies. and Long Seven's benefit. The majority of the people in the conference room were the elite of Trigate Security's Operations Department. However, they didn't have the privileges to look up certain key information. They needed to receive a comprehensive explanation. The projector turned on within the dark room, projecting a different slice of the world inside. The light in the background spelled the time of dusk. The setting sun illuminated to the side. Wrinkled layers of the dark red earth lay alongside plains of wild growth. The earth sucked in the red clouds of the setting sun, appearing like waves of blood frozen instantly during their rush. The earth formed piles upon piles of countless hills and valleys that extended to the reaches of heaven and earth. The wilderness, Wave Peak Hills, Long Seven muttered. It was like he was speaking to himself, yet also deliberately conversing with Peony. Peony turned to look at him. "You're quite familiar with the terrain around Xia City. I go there for a run from time to time." The bird's eye view continued to push forward during their exchange. The elevation gradually dropped at the end of the monotonous horizon, and a blood-red, hilly area emerged, showing that Long Seven's deduction brimmed with acuity. The camera gradually locked onto the target. Countless black dots spiraled in the dusky skies above the hills. They were like a weary flock of birds that wished to return home. But when the camera drew near and locked onto one of the bodies, Luo Nan's eyelid twitched from far away in the campus of Acumen College. What appeared in the center of the projection was not a bird at all. It was more like an ugly and mutated bat. It was, without a doubt, a mutant. The bat wasn't large in size. Its wingspan was around 30 centimeters. Its skull was the size of a small dog's. Its ears were very large. Its teeth were sharp, and its eyes were the color of blood red. Ash-black fur grew around its entire body. Its most distinguishing feature were the 4 claws that extended from the edges of its open webbed wings. Looking at the mutant from a different angle, this monster's limbs were quite complete. It possessed ample muscle, and it appeared to possess extraordinary strength. Its webbed wings appeared to be more like attachments. Intelligence Officer Axel Thew timely intervened with an explanation. Winghand Bloodbat. They are a mutant species that live in flocks. They suck on the blood of large mammalians to survive. While sucking blood, they also inject a paralysis agent and a virus. Large enough doses are fatal. Its diet includes people and even its own species. Large flocks of them can become Class 2 threats. The vagrants of the wilderness call them pubula. It's an onomatopoeia, mimicking the sound of their flapping wings. He turned on the sound upon speaking. The high-fidelity audio reproduced the sound of the scene, the sound of hundreds upon hundreds of devilish bats circling in their flight. They made the uncanny sound of bulabula, which was akin to the sound of a sea of flags fluttering in the wind. The sound was constant. Axel Thew brought out an anatomical diagram at the edge of the projection, then said, "Everyone, please pay particular attention. The Winghand Bloodbat's body doesn't have a vocal organ. It normally doesn't make a sound when it flies and feeds. It is a terrifying assassin of the night. It only makes such a sound when it seeks a mate. Of course, they become extremely violent and keen during these times. Their destructive power is also at the peak." Another diagram popped out from below the anatomical diagram. Axel Thew was quite skilled in PowerPoint. During the Winghand Bloodbat's mating season, the virus that it injects during blood feeding possesses highly infectious and highly deadly characteristics. So far, there are already records of small and medium vagrant tribes being wiped out by being infected. This place, for instance, is a ruin from the annihilation of a vagrant tribe. The camera angled shifted, and the people in the room could see hollowed holes atop the hills. They were quite regular. They were used as windows. These were earth caves, commonly used by vagrant tribes. They were quite solid and great at concealing them, allowing them to avoid the majority of predators in the wilderness. There was the scenario of earth cave battles in the 10 Days in the Wilderness game, so the image was not unfamiliar to Luo Nan. But all that appeared in the image was deathly stillness. The camera switched, and a few withered corpses appeared among scattered rocks and weeds. It seemed that every one of these corpses half contorted. The people in the room could imagine that these vagrants had struggled desperately as they died. Silence descended upon the meeting room. Intelligence Officer Axel Thew continued to explain, "There is something that we need to be particularly aware of. According to the latest research, some of the Winghand Bloodbats have mutated and evolved to gain finite control over its viruses. I don't know how else to say it. Does everyone understand?" Long Seven interrupted with a question. "So you're saying that the Winghand Bloodbat can control its infected target?" "No, it has to do with the degree of infection. There exists a chance that it can cause mutations. According to the experimental data of a certain research organization, a Winghand Bloodbat was able to realize mutation in 2 experimental bodies. Human experimentation. Intelligence Officer Axel Thew swept a glance at his boss and shrugged. The data doesn't indicate this. He didn't continue this topic. He just completely presented the various habits and characteristics of the Winghand Bloodbat in a very patient manner. This included the newest results from various research organizations, and he didn't even miss presenting the variations and subspecies of the Winghand Bloodbat. Unavoidably, he also explained the possible infiltration routes of this mutant into Xia City. The whole thing took 2 hours. Acumen College's morning classes all ended by then. Trigate Corporation must have felt that the presentation was getting too long and tedious. All sorts of drinks, fruits, and snacks were brought to the people in the meeting. Even Ink was given a cup of drinking water. They barely made it to the end when a display board of considerable size appeared to the side of the projection. There were several dark outlines and figures arranged upon it, and they were roughly divided into 4 levels. The top level was a bit sparse, while the bottom level was densely packed. There were at least a couple dozen of them. The projection of the wilderness and the Winghand Bloodbat flock became a mass of light, and this mass of light was cast into the upper left corner of the first outline. At this pace, the meeting would last 2 days. Long Seven couldn't help shaking his head. The scope is considerable. Now is a good time to pull the fire alarm, right? Peony smiled from the corner of her eyes to her lips. She didn't actually mean her words, though. She never counted on Wu Bin to directly respond. She just spoke to her pet. "Mr. Ink, finished with your nap yet?" Ink, who had become as still as a sculpture of clay, raised its eyelids. It really was napping under Luo Nan's orders. Ink just left a strand of consciousness to observe its surroundings, allowing Luo Nan to make use of it. Otherwise, Ink would have long since made a commotion with its lively natural instincts. "We have prepared lunch. I asked the 2 experts to come." Wu Bin had no choice but to explain while giving the invitation. "As you can see, the Winghand Bloodbat is an exception in this case." Peony cast a sidelong glance at him. "There are 3 exceptions. You're still calling them 1 exception." On the 4-level outline of the display board, The top level comprised 3 Winghand Bloodbats. The second level had 5. The third and the fourth had 8. There was a total of 24. Disregarding exceptions, there were 24 mutants who had killed their way into Xia City simultaneously. This was one of the most serious public safety incidents in the last 30 years. Wu Bin continued to beat around the bush. These targets are arranged in decreasing order of threat. As such, we have planned milestone and stage bonuses. The topmost 3 have special rewards. Peony looked straight at Wu Bin in the face. It's great to talk about money, but I bet that the government and military hasn't done much in the directional search for limited targets such as these. Am I right? We can increase the efficiency this way. Oh, true, you can save quite a bit of effort. Mr. Long 7, what do you think? Long 7 crossed his arms, an action that was not very like that of a lord. Modern science and technology is always rapidly progressing. Peony held a goblet atop the table. She shook it slightly, and the blue-green suds of the drink clung to the walls of the goblet as liquid spun within. She immediately raised her cup in indication to Long 7. A toast to Earth's future. Long 7 laughed in response. Their cups gently touched with a clink, and the odd and distorted faces of various people were reflected on the cup's surfaces. Chapter 336. Atop the Electric Shuttle. Translator Strivon. Autumn turned into winter, increasing the nights and decreasing the days. Half of the allotted afternoon school society time had yet to pass when the rays of the setting sun cast upon Acumen College. The sun dyed everything with a layer of red, vaguely matching with the wilderness within the projection. Luo Nan rode the campus's electric shuttle. He headed toward the auditorium with half-lidded eyes. He looked like he was sleeping, but he was not. Zhu Lei didn't mind, splitting the consciousness for 2 uses. Luo Nan had been like this for the entire day, not resting for a short moment. But Luo Nan's wristband started to vibrate. It did so for several dozen seconds, and Zhu Lei could even hear the buzz. This brother still wasn't responding. What the heck? Zhu Lei couldn't hold back at last. He gave Luo Nan a push. Someone's calling you. Luo Nan went, ah, and finally snapped out of it. He saw who it was on the caller ID and put the call through. Hello, third brother. Hu Huying was the one who called. The call barely connected when he smacked Luo Nan with a question. Nanster, where are you? I'm heading to Gear right now. Okay, hurry up a bit. The construction team is wrapping up for today. The underground facilities are pretty much all repaired now. They gave old Zai a call, and old Zai gave me a call to ask you to check it out. Check it out. Luo Nan felt that things were quite amusing. Since Gear had been damaged by the fires last week, that place had become a location where supernatural entities gathered. There were 5, 6, 7, 8 spies stuffed there. What was there to check out? The volume of intelligence each faction was gathering. Of course, this matter had nothing to do with Zai Junping and Hu Huying. When all was said and done, all of this was caused by Luo Nan being too high-profile back then, and the display of his extraordinary attachment to Gear. Even if there was nothing odd about Gear, Luo Nan's actions were bound to stir the attention of several eyes. What's more, this place was not that simple. Luo Nan's emotions swung twice before he responded with a whisper, I know, I'll be there in a minute. Luo Nan hung up and leaned back. He furrowed his brows subconsciously. Zhu Lei turned to look at him. You're no longer attending the meeting. Luo Nan grunted and said, Nope, it's too long. I don't really understand as well. Actually, some of Luo Nan's words were insincere. Zhu Lei couldn't tell, but he was curious. He asked, "What did they talk about?" They talked about things like mutants, genetic infection, and the probability of transmission. Luo Nan used telepathy to inform Peony as he talked with Zhu Lei. He just left a bit of will to give ink reins as he completely withdrew his attention. It was already 4:30 in the afternoon. 7 hours had passed since the meeting started. Luo Nan withdrew, subconsciously letting out a sigh of relief. As the meeting dragged on, the discussions grew more and more technical and specialized. Such specialized knowledge was too obscure and abstract for a high school student. From time to time, it was simply like listening to a different language. To forcefully try to understand it was a waste of brain power, and this would also bring about issues with accuracy. He might as well just listen to the conclusion. The Hidden Indigo Firm were arranging things this way, after all. Luo Nan finally realized Zhang Yingying's kindness. If things were to follow in the style of today's meeting, there wasn't much he had to do for the next few days. However, Luo Nan had to admit that he really learned a lot from this long meeting. Much of the specialized knowledge regarding mutants and the wilderness, as well as the related intelligence analysis, were unheard of and unseen until now. Luckily, Luo Nan had taken lessons from the society recently. Otherwise, Luo Nan would lack even the most basic of common knowledge in these subjects. These days, you need to be careful of cats, dogs, birds, bats, mice, and other animals like these. Don't get hurt by them. Right, there's the recycling stratum in the Jewel River district. You need to be careful of people too. What happened? A viral infection, an epidemic. It's not that serious. The effects on normal people isn't too big. It's mainly us who are. Luo Nan recalled the knowledge he gained from the meeting, giving Zhu Lei a warning. The virus transmitted by the mutant was such that the stronger the infected person, the greater likelihood of mutation. Ability users were people at high risk. It was like some time ago, with the crisis from the divide and spread of the human-faced arachnid. Aside from the unlucky few who got too close, normal people practically escaped unscathed. But several people of Xia City's ability user society branch were controlled by this parasite, creating a huge mess. That was an infection on the mental plane. As for the Winghand Bloodbat, the poison and the virus were transmitted via blood. Physically enhanced ability users would find themselves attracting the Winghand Bloodbats like flies. Zhu Lei's tooth ached just listening to Luo Nan. He gritted his teeth and couldn't help asking a few details. Luo Nan acted as a translator. He took all the information he knew and selected the information that directly concerned him. He simply requested Zhu Lei to refrain from spreading this information. It was fine to warn his family to take note. If any symptoms appeared, they should promptly contact the society. Isn't this a bio-crisis? And the city is hiding it like this. There hasn't been any rumors of it at all. I wouldn't have known if you hadn't told me. Oh, right. Will there be any problems with you telling me these things? I have signed a confidentiality agreement, laughed Luo Nan as he waved his hand. The agreement is written very clearly. The Hidden Indigo Firm and its shareholders have the right to know and follow the developments in the situation. We are also allowed the discretion to notify parties of interest. However, our actions must not cause social impacts. So isn't this okay? Social impacts, Zhu Lei didn't quite understand. No, informing the various authoritative media and social media. Do not cause rumors. This should be all right. Zhu Lei let out a breath of relief, and he couldn't help from breaking into laughter. This agreement isn't worth sh*t. It's quite an unequal one. This clause was extremely vague. To follow to the letter resulted in a limit that was practically boundless. The Xia City's branch was Hidden Indigo Firm's shareholder. They also worked for the public good. Zhu Lei was a member of the society. Legally, it wasn't a problem for Zhu Lei to know. In the meeting, it was unknown just how many times Peony used methods like these to torment Wu Bin to the point of wanting to cry, but being unable to. This was something else Luo Nan had gained today. In addition to the discussion of specialized knowledge, the meeting also involved techniques and skills of office politics. Peony, Long 7, Director Wu Bin, and Intelligence Officer Axel Thieu displayed excellent performances in regard to this. Luo Nan expressed himself quite emotionally while explaining it to Zhu Lei, the flashing of blade light and sword shadows, to kill without a sound. What sort of minds does this group of people have? He really admired them. Luo Nan had experienced many things since entering the inner world. He was always within the eye of the storm, and he always became the target of fire. There were many times when he needed to forge ahead, contend against enemies, and work with his teammates. He never had any leeway to rest. In fact, his experiences proved that he wasn't a natural leader. He was crippled in this aspect to a degree. He spent most of his time past the age of 10 doing experiments and immersing himself in research. His introverted nature was one that was nearly that of a hermit. He had no concept of certain matters at all. He could only move in accordance to what he felt. There were many flaws in his chain of actions, and many times what he did was for naught. Luckily, his fortune was decent. He had the power revealed to him by formatting theory. He also had assistance from He Yuan, Zhang Yingying, and big shots like Ouyang Chen. Only in this way did he not die a violent death, and instead endured the many bumps on the road of life to this day. In today's meeting, Luo Nan remained behind the scenes, a rarely seen action. He just left a strand of consciousness tied to Ink's body. He collected his mouth, only bringing his eyes and ears. He increased his knowledge using only pure observation, obtaining real benefits. He learned in particular from Peony and Long 7. Peony was a very strong individual, but she was extremely good at utilizing her beauty to gloss over and dispel matters. On the other hand, Long 7 was a needle concealed in silk floss, a ruthless character behind a gentle appearance. His sharp, prideful air was concealed behind an aura of confidence and ease produced from his words and actions. Occasionally, the two would oppose each other with equal intensity. Occasionally, the two cooperated closely. Being divided or being together was unfixed. They brought Wu Bin, a seasoned character at the scene, under their rhythm. The team leader had long since become merely the team leader in name. This sort of scene's ability to grab one's attention was much more powerful than that of the dry and boring classroom lectures. Peony and Long 7 were in their 20s, but their stores of knowledge, their bearings, their words and actions, and their natures and characters were quite brilliant to Luo Nan. Luo Nan admired them, and perhaps felt inferior in comparison. He was only 6 or 7 years younger, but they were this different. Would he be able to reach their level through the experience of 6 or 7 years? All right, these hopes seemed uncertain. A call from another person came right when Luo Nan was describing the situation to Zhu Lei. This time, the call came from a different channel. The hexia vibrated. It was Zhang Yingying. The connection was made, and this sister excitedly smacked him in the face with a question. You've been stunned by them, right? Quite stunned, Luo Nan spoke with sincere emotion. Your firm is filled with the elite. Peony is quite amazing. It seems like she's even from our school. Tusk, you've simply jumped ship to go catch lobsters, and now you're speaking modestly. Don't go blindly praising others. What about you? Me, what can I do? I'm just pretending to be a crow over there. Crow my *S. It's more like you're out of it. Big bro, you're the core of this project, okay? Being elite doesn't matter. If you don't talk, they'll just play hide and seek at Xia City. Zhang Yingying's mood was erratic. She was all smiles before, but now she was frustrated because Luo Nan did not meet her expectations. The firm has outsourced this project to you because we look favorably upon your mental sensing ability. All the work depends upon your actions. Letting our firm do all the work is the same as tossing money away. The least you can do is listen. Luo Nan didn't know how he should respond. This quarrel was different from the ones in the past. Zhang Yingying was speaking completely from his standpoint. She exhausted all there was to talk about. There probably wasn't anything he could refute with. He was speechless for a long time, and it was Zhang Yingying who sighed in the end. She slowed down and said, I'm not reproaching you. I just feel that this is an excellent chance for you. The job is practically tailor-made for you. Just do things like in a video game. This, the invasion of mutants, can't be considered a game. A metaphor. It was just a metaphor, okay. Haven't you realized it? Your biggest problem is that you're too stressed. The work is to search out these mutants. You're pretty much the only one with a mental sensing ability on this level in Xia City. Aside from the boss and the president, there's no one who is better than you. This is your specialty. This is your field. You're the authority here. If you don't establish a frame now, when will you? Oh my God. Luo Nan's silence spelled the problem very clearly. Zhang Yingying couldn't hold back from tilting her head to the sky and sighing. Your performances at Frost River Reality and at Ocean Sky Cloud City were quite kick*SS. You stifled people to the point of madness. You cheated people to the point of spitting blood. You killed people, totally annihilating them. You were godlike, but with just a few days of time, you're shrinking more and more. I haven't shrunk, Luo Nan wanted to correct her for his own sake. Yes, you old man, you're growing, but it doesn't hurt to stand up straight every day. Are you getting enough oxygen to your brain? Zhang Yingying shot her mouth off like a machine gun. She mowed down with a rapid-fire beat. Relax. Relax your mind. What are you stressed about? Are you afraid of embarrassment? Don't say that you're an authority. Even if you make a small mistake, you're not really appearing in person. What's wrong with making a mistake? That crow. Its name is ink, right? It is a mask, and you use it to conceal yourself. No one knows who you are. You can laugh or you can curse. You can cry or you can vent. They won't know who you are unless you tell them. Luo Nan asked stupidly, a mask. Chapter 337, Solo. Translator, Strivon. Zhang Yingying stammered a bit when Luo Nan asked this question. The words she just spoke were all driven by her emotions. They were an attempt to evoke Luo Nan's emotions, so Zhang Yingying didn't pay particular attention to her choice of words. How was she to know that this guy, Luo Nan, would be apathetic to the extreme, and even have the leisure to answer her question with a question? Zhang Yingying had no choice. She could only improvise on the fly. Yes, you understand now. When one wears a mask, one gains an additional layer of protection. It is easier to let loose with this protection. Aren't there performance styles with people wearing masks on stage? In those performances, the expressive power of the limbs is regarded as more important than the face. You don't need to worry about ugly appearances. The audience will even naturally imagine it. Don't people say that imagination is more beautiful than reality? Zhang Yingying's logic was a complete mess by the end. Even she was about to facepalm. But she never expected that Luo Nan would really be dragged into the ditches by her. You're saying that this is a show and I am to engage as a new character. This way I can lessen the pressure. The power of imagination had exploded. Zhang Yingying had accidentally saved Luo Nan with her completely broken logic. She immediately seized this chance and fiercely nodded her head from the other side of the call, saying, "Yeah, yeah. Haven't you seen those internet trolls? A lot of them make good money and have good education in real life. They express themselves so virtuously in front of people in everyday life, but they talk bullshit when they go online in anonymity. That's how they vent and relieve stress. Just think, this is human nature. Your behavior on the internet and your own nature are certainly different." Luo Nan conscientiously thought about his own internet life before responding. "It seems like there's not much difference for me." Zhang Yingying took in a deep breath before spitting out word after word with gritted teeth. "Then you go learn. Learn how others vent. Learn how others let loose. Otherwise, you will just keep on stressing out like this, and you'll break down sooner or later. You don't need to think about much else. In the entire firm, only me and the boss know your identity. Peony doesn't know." "Of course she doesn't. She's a newcomer." "A newcomer? What does she do in your firm?" "What else can she do? The boss just unearthed her and has yet to arrange a specific task for her. Then a project just so happened to come along, so we let her coordinate for experience." Luo Nan felt like his heart was stabbed with a knife. Not only did he not relax, he turned gloomy. "A newcomer is this amazing. What did she do before?" Zhang Yingying lost her patience. It was boss's good eyes. I think she had been observing her for quite some time. It was only recently that the boss recruited her. I'm not too certain of her past. She wasn't part of the society, nor an order. She also has no relationships with the military. Who knows where she spawned from? She's super mysterious. Oh right, don't you be intimidated by her. She's just a stage performer, just an assistant and messenger. The important person in question is you." Luo Nan wanted to say, "You wouldn't think so if you were in this meeting." But the words only reached the tip of his tongue when he suddenly felt that something was off. The topic was the same, but today's Zhang Yingying was much more emotional than last week's. She was clearly perturbed. As soon as the thought formed, the words within Luo Nan's mouth changed. Do you not like Peony or something?" Zhang Yingying instantly went silent. Luo Nan thought back on Zhang Yingying's attitude and suddenly realized, "You can't be competing with her, right? Are you jealous of the newcomer? Just go die." Zhang Yingying was really mad now. She hung up the call. Luo Nan went, His evaluation grew firmer. Luo Nan was able to make an assessment out of Zhang Yingying's nature, words, and actions. Zhang Yingying probably had a very special position in the Hidden Indigo Firm. She was very much a favorite of Her Majesty Empress Wu. But all of a sudden, the newcomer Peony came out of nowhere. She was extremely brilliant in handling affairs, and her abilities were very powerful. She likely gave Zhang Yingying a dangerous feeling. These thoughts and feelings were very subtle, subtle enough that perhaps even Zhang Yingying wasn't conscious of them. But they were laid bare in a few words by Luo Nan, in quite a rude and impetuous manner. Honestly, this was very disrespectful of Luo Nan. He got off easy with Zhang Yingying merely hanging up the phone and not blocking him. Luo Nan scratched his head. He started getting a headache over figuring out how to apologize to Zhang Yingying. In the end, he wasn't someone who was good with words. He could only leave a message on the psychic wave network. I spoke wrongly, I'm sorry. Also, thank you, I understand now. Luo Nan's prior words were very clumsy, but they were also very sincere. However, the later few words had false intentions. Understand, he understood in principle, but in practice, his thoughts were far from clear. As time passed, Luo Nan even felt that doing these things wasn't that significant. Would relaxing let those enemies, who were akin to tigers watching their prey, give up? Would it change the pursuit of their goals? He had the time to mull over these matters. He might as well sink into his mind and do some schoolwork exercises. But then someone in the shuttle made a low cry all of a sudden. A muffled boom soon followed. Something heavy had smashed into the vehicle's window, and this brought new and louder shouts. Everyone in the vehicle all turned to look. Most of these people were messaging others online. They had been unaware of what was going on outside the windows. During their befuddled states, a fellow wearing a baseball cap was spotted through an open window. He cursed from afar and gave the middle finger. F***CK, we lost another 0-3, I'll kick you all in the balls. Luo Nan understood now. The electric shuttle had passed the open-air field. An athlete in the middle of training had lost control of his foot, kicking the ball into the shuttle's window. This was supposed to be a minor matter, but some of the students in the shuttle found a common topic, and someone faced the fellow wearing the baseball cap. He said, Team Pathfinder's level this year is full of drunkards, losing to even Yunshang 0-3. They even recruited Clark. Clark, what a soloer. He just knows how to run 100 meters down the sidelines. He must be using this as a chance to train for track and field. How much is the Track and Field Society giving him as a sign-on bonus? Hello, he ran down the entire field. That's nearly 20 kilometers. Are you up for the task? Up for picking weeds? I'll break an ankle on the turf by the time we get through the whole field. You're right, Lando Field is very crappy. It's absolutely not suitable for our school. We should switch to a more responsible sponsor. Who wants to start a petition with me? The atmosphere in the shuttle grew livelier and livelier. A lot of people who had been silent while the vehicle was in motion broke their silence. They participated in the game discussion. Some people even went to the school message board to petition, while some took the opportunity to get the female students' numbers. There were plentiful gains. Luo Nan didn't care for such things. He raised his eyes to look, and was about to go back into his own train of thought and world, when he saw that Zhu Lei was also exchanging numbers with people, and was discussing topics involving Clark. Luo Nan was inexplicably shocked. You know this person? Of course, Clark Kembo, the athletic star of the school, lightning of the field. Rumor has it that soon he'd be able to enter the city's team. I saw his matches before, back when school started. He wasn't as rough with his feet as people are saying now. Zhu Lei spoke as if this was the most obvious thing on earth. Then he became shocked as well. You don't know, his posters are all over the classroom buildings in the school. Luo Nan's mouth gaped. He looked once more at his peers chattering away within the vehicle, and his heart inexplicably fell. He opened his mouth again several seconds later and asked, "Do you also know about Jungle Owl and what it is?" "Of course, man. They're our school's gaming clan. They play 10 days in the wilderness. They lost quite horribly in the autumn games last month. Did you run into a member of Jungle Owl? Who?" "I didn't," Luo Nan muttered. He turned his head to look out the window, scanning the campus subconsciously. Zhu Lei was completely confused. "What's wrong?" "It's nothing. I just feel that I stay at home too much." Luo Nan laughed, not saying much else. Actually, he had spoken another lie. His current assessment of himself couldn't be merely described as staying at home too much. Zhu Lei concentrated on his martial arts, while Peony joined the Hidden Indigo Firm. They each engaged in their own activities, acquiring a certain distance from the world of normal people. However, they didn't lose perception of their surrounding environment. Luo Nan was far too dull in comparison. The shuttle made its way leisurely to the auditorium, and the student passengers went off and on in between. The subject of the soccer ball had vanished into thin air as if nothing had happened. Luo Nan got off the shuttle and deliberately turned his head to look around. His gaze soon cut into the area surrounding the bustling auditorium. A week ago, it was here that he tempered the eye's orifice. He was familiar with each blade of grass and each tree. He also had the number of steps in the flight of stairs in his mind. The faces of people who were often active here were a bit familiar looking to Luo Nan, but that was all. After all, these were merely temporary targets of his observation. There wasn't any deeper information to be acquired. There wasn't any meaning. Luo Nan harbored this sort of understanding all this time. But as he returned to this place today, a certain feeling suddenly dawned upon him. He and this auditorium, the surrounding plaza, and even the entire school were totally incompatible. Things were like this 2 months ago when he had just entered the school, and things were still like this now. This feeling of his was not a good one. Luo Nan and Zhu Lei didn't have time to waste. They simply entered the forest that surrounded the north bank. They made a few turns and arrived in front of Xia. The smell of smoke and ash seemed to remain. The construction team had finished today's work by now. They left one by one, reducing the presence of people. Hu Huying was already waiting at the entrance by the time Luo Nan arrived. Besides him, there waited also the supervisor and the project manager. It looked like today's activity was going to be a formal inspection. Hu Huying immediately introduced everyone, being positioned in between, and Luo Nan nodded in greeting. Luo Nan didn't intend to go deeper into conversation. He also didn't immediately go inspect. Instead, he went to ask for Zai Junping. Previously, the young master of the Zai family was forging on ahead, but all of a sudden he was nowhere to be seen. Luo Nan really did want to see him. With Zai Junping present and chatting up a storm, wouldn't things be lively? Old Zai has been acting quite mysteriously lately. It probably has something to do with Sissy Du. They're doing some fasting cultivation. Luo Nan accidentally heard the biggest joke in Xia City. He couldn't help grinning. Hu Huying also couldn't but laugh. Waking up at 6 a.m., going to sleep at 9 p.m., he has maintained this for 5 days. Oh, that's not easy. But having order in life is a good thing. He has perseverance. The Sissy Du Hu Huying just mentioned was the former president of the Mystic Arts Research Society, Du Yong. Luo Nan only met him once before. He wasn't too familiar with him. He just knew that Du Yong was a bit neurotic, albeit a decent person. They started to talk about Xia after a few words of idle chatter. The project manager maintained his silence while the supervisor explained. Luo Nan didn't really listen. Nothing but the installation of wiring, the maintenance of various systems, and related things were said. Luo Nan made grunts and okays in response. He wasn't a technical person, he just checked the contract commissioned to the supervisor. It was just that things didn't merely involve construction. The supervisor's spy work was played quite swimmingly, protectively, and so on. Luo Nan would be damned to trust him. Chapter 338, Bottom of the Atrium. Translator, Strivon. Currently, gear attracted flies. Luo Nan recognized this. Within Acumen College, gear had always been tinted with a bit of a mysterious flavor. Even Zhang Yingying, a layman, heard of the nickname the Ritual Club. Rumor had it that gear was very suitable for carrying out mystic rituals. And with Luo Nan making that move, every expert and professional would find it hard not to find gear strange. Actually, before the various spies crammed their way in, the Xia City branch of the society had already made an assessment. They said that the layout of the building was out of the norm. As for the concrete places of interest, these results could not be obtained in a short amount of time. Because of this, Yingying suggested that Luo Nan follow the principle of removing whatever was blocking the way. First, release the people inside, avoid sealing off various locations, and let everybody guess around to their heart's content. The matter regarding headquarters was a lesson to be learned from. This was an intelligent method, but it was also a move of withdrawal. For a week, Luo Nan acted in accordance to Yingying and the others' instructions. He acted as if he hadn't seen the actions of the spies, but he was actually agitated in his heart. He couldn't bear letting outsiders open access. He couldn't stop the spies coming from all sides. He had to suffer in silence. But this didn't mean that he would treat the spies with a good expression. He had a plan early in mind. He let the supervisor engineer talk and guide them in a stroll underground. And so, half an hour passed with Luo Nan not expressing any opinion, nor revealing any emotions. Soon, night fell, and the supervisor and project manager were completely unable to get a feel for Luo Nan. They felt that there was no point in continuing. Hu Yingying was capable of reading Luo Nan's behavior by now. He gave a few words to deal with the situation and sent the supervisor and project manager away. Hu Yingying waited for the outsiders to scram before asking, "Nanster, is this work not to your taste?" Luo Nan shook his head. "I don't understand when it comes to the specialized matters, but besides that I'm not really dissatisfied. Just let them continue with the repairs. You know, this place is very meaningful to me. As long as nothing happens, everything is fine. But something did happen, so this place needs a few protective measures. I can't find outsiders for that job. Old Zai mentioned this before, so that's why this construction doesn't include the restoration of the defense system. He's thinking that you will want to personally design it. You're certainly not lacking in experts." Hu Yingying's laughter more or less contained a hint of flattery. Last week at Ocean Sky Cloud City, he personally witnessed how the flame of the young master of the He family had been suppressed. No, the flame hadn't been suppressed. The person extinguished the flame himself. Each and every one of the people who revolved around Luo Nan was very mysterious and perhaps very influential. Most notable was He Donglu's sister. According to his hidden sources, that was He Donglu's real sister of flesh and blood. She had just retired from the special forces in the military. Who would have expected that she was working with Luo Nan? Hu Yingying had been slightly suspicious in the past of how Zhang Yingying normally acted with his friend Luo Nan. But today was different. He was given the opportunity, and he was capable of doing things more fervently than Xia Jinping by tenfold. The Xia family was Xia City's #1 major business group, no two ways about it. There was a level of difference between the Xia family and the Hu family. When others came out with force, you had to strive to catch up. Tenfold was not an exaggeration. Hu Yujing even thought a layer deeper. Old Xia didn't come out to greet Luo Nan today. He ran off to play some mystic arts with Sissy Du. Was this being overconfident that his relationship with Luo Nan was stable? Or did this imply going toward a different direction that was in accordance to one's fancy? As Hu Yujing pondered, they walked as a group out of the fire escape passageway and entered some wide, open space. The lighting had dimmed. There weren't any lights on. The dark sky emerged above their heads. Hu Yujing had leaned back against the wall of this place for many days. He was extremely well informed of the layout and repair progress of the building gear. He swept his gaze around and said, "This place, the atrium, is a bit messy. It is hard to avoid dropping some junk here during the renovations. You have to wait until the end before cleaning this place." Luo Nan grunted and raised his head to look. Gear had 7 floors underground and 4 floors above ground. There was also a half-open rooftop for a total of 20 floors. They were currently on the lowest floor, looking at the peak of the large atrium several meters high. The construction layout of Gear was unconventional. As for how it was unconventional, one needed an architect or someone in the know like Luo Nan to be able to explain. Even the directional angles were not completely the same. In any case, from the perspective of the majority of people, the circular, cascading, and practically slanting internal structure of Gear was probably what would leave the deepest impression. Within this series of structures, the most eye-catching thing was the perfectly straight atrium that linked all the floors together. Nothing else could surpass this in Luo Nan's eyes. It was different from the vast majority of similar structures. The atrium of Gear was situated at the westernmost side of the building. Its edge was the outer wall of the building. Its height exceeded 50 meters, and it took up considerable space. If the lights weren't turned on, and the angle of the rays of the sun wasn't suitable, the atrium would appear pitch black from top to bottom. The darkness was quite terrifying. Looking at it with a dark mindset, this was an excellent place to commit suicide. The outer wall of the atrium was surrounded by bulletproof glass, probably to prevent such circumstances from happening. Not even the slightest of cracks was spared on each floor. It would require quite the skill to jump down. From the bottom of the atrium, one could tilt their head upward and see the evening sky. The lights of the metropolis, aside from a ray of the setting sun, were what dimly smeared this place with the dusk's colors. The atrium was 20 meters in diameter. It was extremely spacious, but from an issue of height, it appeared rather slender no matter the perspective. Only when one reached the bottom to personally experience this place could one know just how large this space was. Luo Nan gave Zhu Lei a laugh. "This place is quite decent to train at every day. The atmosphere isn't too stuffy, right? The rooftop can be closed when it rains. It's more convenient than the outside." "It's worth a shot," Zhu Lei grinned. He took himself to be a bodyguard since they entered Gear. He uttered not a word and was in a complete state of vigilance. In secret, he even operated the detection device allocated to him by the society. This was to defend against anything of the construction team that might have been left behind in the dark and had yet to see the light of day. Zhu Lei relaxed now that he was chatting with Luo Nan. He copied Luo Nan raising his head and looking at the sky. He suddenly thought of something, closing the rooftop. That must use glass as well, right? Then this is like an astronomical telescope. Actually, it does have this function. Hu Ying remembered that information about this was included in the data. He immediately showed off. It can be realized through an internal mounting module. The equipment room is on the 6th floor underground. Of course, we'll need to swap to a special lens as well. The retrofitting should be done in an hour. Of course, you can't change the direction of this telescope. You can only look at the small area above your head. An hour, Zhu Lei's heart stirred a bit. He really wanted to experience it. Hu Ying rushed to mend his words. We can't do it right now. This function was added in 1991. The Order Club collapsed soon after construction finished. The nearly purchased equipment were all sold off. The depreciation cost them hundreds of thousands. Are you playing with me? Zhu Lei rolled his eyes. Before he could talk, Luo Nan laughed wryly, ruining it by adding something superfluous, like drawing legs on a snake. Hu Ying's mind went blank for a moment. He honestly didn't understand what Luo Nan was talking about. In any case, he wasn't affected from parroting Luo Nan's words, so the legs of the snake were chopped off. Luo Nan didn't say anything else. He quietly looked into the night sky. It was unknown where his thoughts drifted to. Hu Ying and Zhu Lei locked gazes. They were just about to talk when Luo Nan raised his arm to look at his wristband. Luo Nan's brow furrowed. Someone's looking for me. Third brother, you and Zhu Lei go ahead and chat. I'm going to pick up this call. Hu Ying really wanted to agree then, drag Luo Nan and Zhu Lei to eat dinner. He wanted to establish friendly relations. But he had second thoughts. With Luo Nan's introverted nature, he couldn't be impatient in playing friendly. What if he pushed things too far? So Hu Ying immediately said, you do what you gotta do. I'll head on out first. Sure enough, Luo Nan didn't urge him to stay. He nodded and gave another word of thanks. Then he hurriedly walked into the fire escape passageway. That call of his must be very private. Zhu Lei and Hu Ying took the elevator up, sending Luo Nan their farewells. Soon, the silence at the bottom of the atrium was restored. Luo Nan waited for the elevator to go up as he stood in the fire escape passageway. He didn't turn on his wristband communications. Instead, he subtly closed his eyes. His thoughts pulsed to arrive at the business hotel several dozen kilometers away. His temporary partner Peony had used the rubber band to stimulate ink, and this was sensed by Luo Nan. The reason she did this was very simple. The meeting had finished. Luo Nan looked at the time. It was around 6 p.m. right now. The meeting had lasted nearly 9 hours. Peony walked to the elevator, with ink still on her shoulder. They paired up quite well, but things were different from when they arrived. There was another person in the elevator. It was none other than Long 7. The two people had no desire for further conversation, but Long 7 was paying a bit more attention than usual to ink in the elevator. They exited the elevator as they arrived at the underground parking lot and simply walked to the first row of cars. There was a supercar there. It wasn't low-key at all. Luo Nan vaguely recalled that this was the location where Old Jin had parked. Where did the man and his car go? Old Jin's ordinary SUV came speeding in during Luo Nan's moment of bafflement. He flashed his lights and stopped in front of Peony, who was standing before the elevator. He arrived right on the dot. Clearly, he hadn't wasted an entire day in waiting. He was eating a giant burger from who knows where. The fragrance was quite strong. Peony let ink ride shotgun. She sat in the back seat as before. Old Jin opened the window, dispersing the fragrance inside the car. Then he started the car, and he heard Long Seven call out at this time. "See you tomorrow." Peony waved her hand rather aloofly, and soon the SUV sped out of the underground parking lot. Only now did Peony talk business. She spoke rapidly. "The meeting will continue tomorrow. I will send the related information and meeting records to the internal cloud space. Please check if you've received them." Luo Nan wanted to ask the situation of the meeting in detail, but he thought about the behavior Zhang Yingying had revealed earlier on and hesitated slightly. In the end, he didn't say anything. The car entered a state of silence. It was now old Jin's turn to talk. "Where do you want to get off?" Luo Nan remembered that Peony was probably a person from Acumen College. If he got off with her, he might draw this woman's suspicions. This must not happen. The firm hid his true identity. It would be better to hold this disguise until the end. "I'll leave once we leave the parking lot. Then see you tomorrow." They didn't perform any civilities. As soon as the car entered the main road, Ink jumped out the window, spread its wings, and flew into the night sky. At the same time, at Xia, Luo Nan logged into the cloud space and checked the meeting minutes. The related documents came from Trigate Corporation. This company did matters in accordance to standards. The meeting minutes were very tidy and understandable. Peony even made annotations line by line. She marked the important points. Luo Nan really didn't know where she got the mental energy and time. Aside from the data, she even wrote a few brief reports about the members of the meeting. The focus of her attention was naturally Long Seven. Peony already obtained a preliminary conclusion, and the decisive point actually had to do with his fashionable ear. In Peony's report, the material of Long Seven's earring belonged to some kind of superplastic memory alloy material. It could morph greatly under high temperatures. It was a mechanical key largely preferred by burners. In other words, Long Seven was very likely a deep blue walker. In addition, this man was quite familiar with Xia City. He even possessed the special ability of radiation neutralization. Peony already locked onto the target. He was Snake 7 of Sky Blue Security, a subsidiary company under Quantum Corporation. Chapter 339, Within a Prison. Translator Strivon. Snake 7's identity was peeled open in just a few hours. Luo Nan grinned as he examined Peony's report in detail. The report simply indicated how Snake 7 had once appeared during the Society's operation in rescuing Rui Wen. Of course, he appeared as an enemy of the Society. Luo Nan didn't have a deep impression of this man. After all, 7 or 8 deep blue walkers had mobilized that night, and many of them became casualties. God knows which one was which. Within Luo Nan's memories, the post-operation report did contain this codename. The codename represented the man's depth of involvement in this conflict, but nothing more. He was just one of the people who were on the opposing side of the Society. Luo Nan didn't feel emotionally moved like, "Oh, so it was him." His attention deviated a little. Luo Nan thought a level deeper. There was no reason for this Snake 7, or this Long 7, not to use similar methods as them. The focus of his analysis would certainly be Peony, but Ink was quite an eye-catching mark, being an enormous crow. Ink was at least 70% likely to be Long 7's incision point. Could Luo Nan still hide his identity? Ink was quite high-profile on that night, especially during the prior half. There were certainly more than a few eyewitnesses at the underground fighting arena. Luo Nan was furrowing his brow in contemplation when a refresh symbol appeared on the cloud space document. He tapped it gently, and the entire document was updated. There was instantly a lot more text. Under careful examination, there was more detailed information on Snake 7, and they were all laid out within the document. So Luo Nan came to find out that Snake 7 was a very talented ability user. He was ambitious, seeking to become a deep blue walker, so he entered Quantum Corporation of his own accord. He became a special test subject with his young age, and later he strongly requested entrance to the mobilization team. So he was transferred over to Sky Blue Security. The document even touched upon Snake 7's personality, how he handled things, his family relations, and so on. This character, who Luo Nan once found mysterious, was exposed in complete daylight in the blink of an eye. Practically nothing was hidden from Luo Nan. A fine strand of air seeped through the cracks between Luo Nan's teeth, cooling his heart as well. He logged out from the cloud space. His brain was a bit messy, but there was a part that remained extremely clear. With Luo Nan's current reputation, special position, and role, the various intelligence agencies would never overlook him. As one tiny clue could reveal the overall picture, looking at Snake 7's life events. Perhaps there were also files on Luo Nan atop the desks of the various intelligence agencies, endlessly refreshing with newer information. Each and every movement was likely to be completely exposed to the naked eye of others, just like with Snake 7. Not even an iota of privacy remained. Luo Nan stood at the bottom of the atrium in a daze. His wristband vibrated several dozen seconds later. Zhu Lei was calling, "I'm practicing my punches in front of gear. Give me a heads up when you want to go home." "Oh," Luo Nan absently responded. Then he snapped out of it and expressed his refusal. "It's already dinner time. You can go back first. No need to wait for me." School was already out by now. Zhu Lei had worded his speech this way because he understood the tempo of Luo Nan's life. Right around this time every day, Luo Nan trained. His schoolwork and studies were all fixed to the dot. Going home alone is very boring. It's better to go together. Luo Nan spat, then we split at the school gate. Luo Nan was currently living at his aunt's house. Zhu Lei lived at Jewel River District. Heading home, one would go west, while the other would go east. Things would be bizarre if they headed the same way. Ultimately, Zhu Lei just had the thought of being a bodyguard in mind. He feared shameless enemies like headquarters appearing. Zhu Lei also felt that he was being a bit absurd. He asked, "So when are you going to get your independence and freedom, man? You don't even need to go to the hospital for treatment anymore." "My aunt isn't scared of me going for treatment. She's scared of me suddenly needing rescue." Luo Shuqing no longer trusted Luo Nan's health. This account had gone bankrupt. It was also impossible to explain the concept of the coupling between flesh and soul to Mrs. Luo Shuqing. Luo Nan could only entrust his hopes to someone else. "My cousin will come back next week. With her present to draw away my aunt's firepower, I'll give it another shot." The two chatted for a bit, and Zhu Lei started shadowboxing. Luo Nan really envied Zhu Lei's current state. This week, Zhu Lei had transferred school societies, thanks to Zai Junping's efforts. He had no worries, besides acting as Luo Nan's bodyguard every day. Zhu Lei spent most of his time cultivating in martial arts. His time was spent quite productively. Luo Nan's emotions fluctuated much more widely than his friends. Especially now, being stimulated by the intelligence document, Luo Nan's heart was filled with agitation. He didn't have the mood to think about reality. He strolled a few steps at the bottom of the atrium, then looked up again. Within his daze, the perfectly straight atrium and the ring-like night sky was like a prison, sealing him inside. No, that was wrong. Why would there be a prison within his mother's work? Luo Nan's thoughts changed once more when he thought about his mother. He looked at the atrium once more. The structure blended into itself. He looked up from below. This place was like an abyss that led to the realm of the starry skies. There was no limit to its destitution. In the end, those few thoughts were born from his own fear. The prison was drawn by his own hands. Luo Nan shook his head, dispersing the illusion. He looked at the time. It was a few minutes before the appointed time. He sat down cross-legged and recalled the breathing technique taught personally to him by Gym Master Xiu. He tried to quiet his mind. The currents of his heart really did settle a bit with the passing of several breaths. Luo Nan even closed his eyes and practiced his circulation homework. The energy polished within his body, and the heart lantern of the eye's orifice blazed with splendor, gradually burning away the distracting thoughts in his mind to nothing. Seemingly according to coupling theory, there currently existed a total of 2 relatively complete gears within Luo Nan's body and soul structure. One was soul's strength, driven and born from formatting theory. This power had long since exceeded the limits of what his physical body could endure. It was great and difficult to control. Luo Nan relied on the hollow depository function of the external neuron to barely form a stable structure. Although he did this, the soul strength laked and overflowed at all times. It was truly like an iceberg that stood tall within the ocean. It was vast and overwhelming, towering and imposing, its pressure absolute. Luo Nan gave it a name, God Gear. The other was the eye's orifice. It was the product of a technique imparted by Zhu Shenyu. Relying on the natural marvels of the human body and borrowing his special circumstances, Luo Nan created a completely new vehicle of transferring and refining soul strength. The result was the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, and it excited the potential of the human body. Luo Nan named it Body Gear. According to Gym Master Xiu's teachings, achieving success in cultivating in the eye's orifice was only the beginning in cultivating the fleshly body. Compared with the towering iceberg in the ocean that was the God Gear, the Body Gear was merely a small reservoir. It could only play an auxiliary role in regulation. Right then, within Luo Nan's body, an embryonic form of an order frame was established from the God Gear and the Body Gear. Through the technique of coupling, the gears engaged together for mutual influence. The frame had been formed, but it was simple and crude. Luo Nan still relied much on external forces. Without the suppression from the external neuron, Luo Nan was guaranteed an instant annihilation. Even with the quelling of the external neuron, electric flames circulated, and energies exchanged and clashed between the God Gear and the Body Gear. Several waves of thunderclouds and stormy winds swept through every day. There was no point in telling others the suffering Luo Nan endured. These dangers were hidden in Luo Nan's body, and these dangers didn't leave even an ounce of room for trial and error. Luo Nan had little say. He was forced to use the most concentrated of manners to engage in cultivation. He had to cultivate his foundation with extreme care to amend the frail balance between his body and soul. All trivial and distracting thoughts had to be scattered as ashes into the wind as soon as he began cultivating. It was actually quite effective in dispelling his negative emotions. There was no concept of time as Luo Nan entered the meditative state. Luckily, Luo Nan recalled that he still had cultivation lessons. He just did some maintenance on the eye's orifice structure, dispelling the excessive strength of the interference power's electric flame, and he ended this homework assignment. He left his meditative state. His senses were exceptionally sharp, yet his mind was at peace once more. The surrounding information all coalesced inside, and he felt a marvelous sound permeate into his ears. Tick-tock, tick-tock, like the fine ticking of the hands of a clock, which rotated in circles without beginning nor end. Luo Nan wasn't the least bit surprised. From his perspective, this was the sound of gear breathing. There were 15 main halls within 12 floors above and below ground, particularly above ground, including the atrium. Together, they were like a well-calibrated machine. Every component operated smoothly, unhindered. The teeth of the gears meshed and fused together. This was the only way such a harmonic rhythm could be formed. From Luo Nan's perspective, this was the sound of nature. This was the reward from his earnest cultivation. He smiled subconsciously as he listened to the clear and orderly beat. But noise cut in a mere handful of seconds later. It was a static sound. At first, there was only one, suddenly affecting the beat. But the noise continued to spawn several seconds later. It was like the sudden insert of the dry cawing of birds and frogs during the performance of a band. The noise undulated at random, turning a perfectly fine performance into a nightmare. Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes. The sound of nature existed no longer, but the noise remained. They were layers upon layers of overlapping radio waves. The sources came from various corners of the building. Surveillance cameras, tapping devices, optical cables, antennas. All sorts of forms. They gathered all sorts of information and transmitted it out. They were like pairs and pairs of cold and dark eyes, spying on Luo Nan's each and every action from various angles. It was like a prison. Luo Nan raised his head. The darkness could not obstruct his gaze that was augmented by the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Through the solid glass, a certain security camera located on the underground third floor was pointed right at him. It did this openly. There were monitoring equipment doing work all around him. This was absolutely not the only one. The corner of Luo Nan's lips crinkled. He wanted to rage, but he inexplicably felt that things were absurd and ridiculous. The corners of his lips rose subconsciously as he thought of how he was worried about Long Seven discovering his identity, and how his thoughts became an omen. What ought to come should come. Luo Nan squeezed a dry and hoarse sound out of his mouth. He had just dispelled those negative emotions, but they suddenly descended back upon him like a storm. The rumbling thunderclouds crackled down into his heart. Bang! The security surveillance camera shattered to pieces on the underground third floor. Similar sounds of shattering resounded in the various corners of the building at the same time. Of course, there was also the muffled sound of circuit breakers tripping. Direct means brought about crude results. The sparse lighting within the building of gear suddenly went out. Then the central control system automatically operated, activating the backup electrical line. But very unfortunately, it failed. Even the listening devices were destroyed. With how concentrated they were, it would be hard for even the backup system to escape this fate. Luo Nan stood within the darkness, coldly feeling everything. But then Zhu Lei came calling him. His voice changed into one of nervousness. "Report your position Connect mentally. I'm all right. Luo Nan didn't know how to explain to Zhu Lei. The wristband vibrated once more to start the central control system on manual operation mode. It asked him if he wanted to use repair robots for emergency repairs. Luo Nan easily agreed and found an excuse. The quality of the construction work of those people is completely awful. Yeah, it's like this. The Hexia vibrated at this time. Bamboo Pole was online on the psychic wave network. He was quite punctual according to the teaching schedule, and he sent a greeting to Luo Nan. This was the usual procedure between them, but the message Bamboo Pole left today was a bit odd. Are you mad? Chapter 340, Two People. Translator, Strivon. The message came out of nowhere, and it shocked Luo Nan, but he soon linked it to the changes from before. How does he know? They're spying on me. Oh, I think they mentioned this to me a couple of days ago. The direct logic evoked rage, but some blurry memories turned clear. The two sides clashed and turned into a wave of meaningless emotional unrest. Yes, when the Xia City branch of the society first started surveying, Yingying had proposed to install monitoring and alarm devices within Xia in order to deal with unusual situations. Luo Nan had agreed at the time, and Bamboo Pole was the one in charge of installations. He even integrated the control system to his wristband. How fortunate! Luo Nan couldn't distinguish between enemy and self when he got angry. He completely slaughtered everything clean. Luo Nan wanted to leave a reply, but he didn't know what to say. It took him a long time before he responded with false words. It's nothing. If you say so. Are we still going to do the lesson today? Bamboo Pole's attitude was really not that of a qualified teacher. This was his usual style. Already, a month's worth of time had been completed within the course schedule, arranged by Yingying. Among the courses, paper cuts, soul strength activation techniques became extremely simple thanks to Luo Nan achieving the ability of coupling. It was the first course Luo Nan finished, and Luo Nan also finished Yingying's ins and outs of the Psychic Wave Network's world order 2 days ago. As for the two highly practical courses from Crag Burst and Red Fox, adjustments had to be made due to changes in circumstances, which included Luo Nan's increase in ability. Luo Nan had yet to officially start these courses. This just left Bamboo Pole's course, notes on the major characters of the world, and they continued to make steady progress on it. A fluctuation of emotions wasn't a reason to refuse taking lessons. Luo Nan soon responded, "Yes, can we begin now?" "No problem." Bamboo Pole immediately skipped over those unpleasant matters. He sent a set of pictures, videos, and other image materials of people as usual, setting the main content of today's class. He then opened the video call function and waved his hand in greeting. He went blah blah blah, conversing with Luo Nan. Bamboo Pole was the only one who talked the vast majority of the time. Most of his speech consisted of things like, "Don't look at how devout this person appears. Actually, he takes on very beautiful lovers. Don't be surprised." This was the way Bamboo Pole usually taught. He called it delightful teachings. Luo Nan never met someone as knowledgeable in random facts as this fellow. His appearance was typically that of a hacker, as he easily searched for every avenue of beautiful women. But he also had deep attainments in regard to religion, history, mystic arts, and so on. He was also a paparazzi master. His course was mainly about people. He only talked about 2 or 3 each class. The moment he dug out one, he would talk about their proper matters, trifling matters, news, gossip, and all the like. Many layers and many perspectives came down in the class. The characters he talked about were established firmly in Luo Nan's mind. They were hard to forget. But based on the pace, the course progressed quite leisurely. Looking at the course plans, He Yuan's and Bamboo Pole's course volumes were about the same. But He Yuan's course had already finished, while Bamboo Pole's plan to cover 100 characters was less than half completed. Bamboo Pole spoke frankly. There are two types of people halfway through this kind of course. One type is very interested. They will go digging on their own. They'll learn on their own. The other isn't interested. They just chat, but at least it's fun. This kind of course can be long or short. It can easily adjust to any time. He was fully aware Luo Nan's mood was amiss today, so what he taught was relatively simple and the course content unfurled in full swing. He spoke for a while, even taking the initiative to ask, "Do you want to stop here?" Luo Nan was suddenly started awake from his dazed state. He knew that he wasn't paying much attention and was quite embarrassed. He hurriedly apologized. Bamboo Pole responded, beaming, "Don't be a stranger. In fact, I'm an informer who serves you, boss. I'm in charge of pushing information toward you. When the boss has time, I'll report more information. When the boss is busy, I'll report less information. Boss, you've been very busy lately, right?" Luo Nan felt helpless. The group who participated with him in the matter at Frost River Reality called him boss anytime, anywhere. This was originally a word of irony from Red Fox to He Yuan, but he was called this day in and day out, and the maliciousness of the word was wiped away. It even became a well-known nickname. Bamboo Pole was a mischievous person. He would feel uncomfortable if he didn't call Luo Nan this a few times a day. Luo Nan could only ignore the nickname, but Bamboo Pole had hit the nail on the head. He really was working himself to death the past few days. He enlisted worker Zhai as his tutor, and he was learning engineering from him. This huge subject required much time and energy if one wanted to attain some achievements in it. The time and energy required were much more than what a crash course would demand. However, today's bad mood had nothing to do with the stresses of learning. At that moment, Luo Nan didn't have the mindset to learn, but he really wanted to speak with someone, and he didn't know where to begin. He subconsciously flipped through the material that was just given to him. He glanced over the names and achievements, immediately forgetting them. But he made some mental connections thanks to how multi-leveled and multi-angled the data was organized, customary to Bamboo Pole's style. This data, how much of it was accumulated from tapping devices, bugs, Luo Nan's lips twitched. Is everyone researched in this way? Most of it is public information. Of course, much of it is the blood and sweat of paparazzi. Bamboo Pole raised an eyebrow. They are like you, interested in this course. You can use it as a template and pass as a chief paparazzi in a large entertainment media company. It won't be a problem. Luo Nan was suddenly hit with a thought. I can be considered to have a reputation by now, right? To a certain degree, yes. Then, Brother Bamboo Pole, what kind of person am I? What have people like you researched? Luo Nan wanted to know how much of his background was exposed to the various intelligence agencies. This was his intention in asking, but his ability to express himself in words was very worrying, causing Bamboo Pole to slightly misunderstand. Whoa, do you feel lost in life? You want to analyze yourself. Luo Nan wanted to correct him, but his thoughts changed and he thought some more. Before arriving at Xia, interacting with Zhang Yingying had made his mind a mess, putting him in a bad mood. It wouldn't be a bad thing if he could clear up the roots of his problems. He said, I guess. In the video chat, Bamboo Pole sat on an ergonomic chair. He adjusted himself into a comfortable position and said, I've mentioned the ways people are researched. There is nothing else but three aspects: natural, societal, and psychological. These are combined with the specific nodes regarding the changes of time and space. Luo Nan nodded. He had learned this, but setting a hand to delve into it was a bit complicated. Bamboo Pole chuckled. You've asked quite urgently, and I haven't prepared. However, you took the initiative to ask, so let's use this as material. Let's make a simple analysis. Okay, Luo Nan said helplessly. Let us begin from your topic. A normal, natural person, a societal person, possesses the instinct of psychological privacy, of psychological defenses. People pay attention to the assessment of others toward them, but they rarely take the initiative to have others assess themselves. The exceptions are when they want to show off or when they lack confidence. The intent is consultation, and doing so is considered abnormal. Luo Nan went, and couldn't help laughing. He said, then just say I'm asking for a consultation, although the intent is a little lighter. Bamboo Pole shook his head. There's no need to consult with me. Ask yourself. Ask the self who is here in the present. Under natural conditions, what are your body's circumstances? Are you as fierce as a tiger and as energetic as a dragon? Or do you have a hidden disease? Please be quick about. My body is not completely well, I guess. Luo Nan still needed the external neuron right now. The scope in discrepancy between the god Xia and the body Xia was a deep-seated problem, most especially with the uncontrollable growth of his mental power. He had yet to make a general resolution about this matter, so there were no ends to his troubles. Luckily, there were a lot less human-faced arachnids roaming Xia City nowadays. Otherwise, the Wraith sign in the Bloodflame Order would have its hunting speed increase by double. And in turn, this would cause Luo Nan's mental power to increase to the point where his body was in danger of exploding. The cultivation technique of the orifices that he learned from Gym Master Xiu was unable to eliminate a scale too large. Bamboo Pole didn't dig deeper. He changed angles, looking at your circumstances societal-wise. What is your situation? This time Luo Nan didn't hesitate. He responded, not good. Though he had the backing of and many friends from the Xia City branch, there were all sorts of potential threats to him that ranged from headquarters, Quantum Corporation, the Order of Justice, and even the Bloodflame Order. They were akin to bombs, and Luo Nan would be annihilated 10 times over if they were all to go off. Psychological circumstances, forget it, it's plain as day. Bamboo Pole whistled, 3 major items, all complete with situations. The answer needs no further discussion. The problem is very serious, my boy. Luo Nan never expected this sort of result from following Bamboo Pole's template and performing a quick analysis. Didn't this mean that his entire self was twisted? He temporarily forgot about the matter with intelligence agencies. His mind was blank for a while before he asked, how do I resolve it? Bamboo Pole spread his hands open in helplessness. You want me to be your staff officer? Why are you counting on me when even secretary he can't handle this matter? Luo Nan knew this was true, but he still asked, if you were in my shoes, brother Bamboo Pole, what would you do? If I were you, I would turn tail and leave. I would run as far as can be. I would hide as deep as can be. I would be like a cicada that sheds its carapace, vanishing and leaving an empty shell. I would retreat for the sake of progress. I would turn to light for the sake of darkness. Yeah, I know you won't do this. I'm just talking nonsense. Bamboo Pole maintained a clear mind from beginning to end. He sighed, all right then, I'll give you two examples you can use as references. I've mentioned the first before, Her Majesty Empress Wu. In the earliest of times, when Her Majesty Empress Wu started off, quite a few people said that she was Lady Wu, someone who only has their looks. Then people called her fourth-ranked Imperial Consort Wu, and later, Empress Consort Wu. This continued until she was finally known as Her Majesty Empress Wu. This is reference to the classical figure Wu Zetian of the Tang dynasty, a controversial yet effective monarch who started off as a concubine and became the only female emperor of China. The names follow Wu Zetian's titles as she grew in power. Our Empress Wu remained unmoved during all this. She's like a stone, immovable by the flowing river. She's smooth on the surface, yet firm at heart. Smooth on the surface, yet firm at heart. Luo Nan instinctively felt that the wording was off. Bamboo Pole pressed with his views. Did you forget? I told you before. Sure, Her Majesty Empress Wu is very domineering, but back in the day, her skill in maneuvering through politics is incredible. She starts off by relying on President Aoyang's influence, then she carves out an independent business, the Hidden Indigo Firm. She never recruits fighters to her firm, and she's never done things low-key at all, though she's also never crossed the line. She has a galaxy of talent for subordinates. Before, the Xia City branch and even headquarters weren't always on good terms with her, but nowadays, they've either been appeased or suppressed by her. No matter the stormy waves, she remains unmoved. She steadily expands, forming major power. Her rule is as fair as the heavens, and the way she employs people is as mysterious as a demon. She grasps the true meaning of power, technique, and influence. Bamboo Pole wasn't finished with his words of praise toward Her Majesty Empress Wu. This sort of style that is motionless like a mountain can be said to be the way of monarchs. The title Her Majesty Empress Wu is said as a mockery by some people, but I feel that it's very appropriate. Her approach is the most supreme way, in my opinion. Luo Nan imagined how Her Majesty Empress Wu might have maneuvered so skillfully political-wise, and had his thoughts wander far away for a time. This approach must be very hard, right? Bamboo Pole laughed. Others have a clear goal from the start. Their methods are sharp. They use both the carrot and the stick. You can't learn it, and it's too late even if you can. Luo Nan was left speechless. I used this example to give you a benchmark so that you have a reference. Let us talk about the second example. I haven't talked about this one before, but you're certainly very familiar with her. She's none other than your secretary, Sister Yuan. Chapter 341, Solicitor. Translator, Strivon. Bamboo Pole gazed straight at Luo Nan as an image through the psychic wave network. He chuckled as he said, I won't say much else. You're taking my class, and you're taking Secretary his class. Don't you have any impressions? Yes, probably. Luo Nan wasn't hesitating in his heart as much as he was with his mouth. After all, he, Yuan, and Bamboo Pole were both teaching him cultural courses, but their styles were completely different. It was unavoidable for him to sometimes compare in private. Bamboo Pole encouraged him, speak and see. There wasn't much else to say about Bamboo Pole's teaching style. As for Yuan's teaching style, Luo Nan had to think as he spoke. When Sister Yuan teaches, she easily provides all sorts of information. She covers vastly and thoroughly, and she also makes the overall concept exceptionally clear. Her lessons are quite enchanting. And what else? Her arguments are precise and appropriate. Her words are precise, and the meanings are plentiful. They are usually sharp to the bone. She often points out the deep, hidden activities behind important events. She explains the relationship between the secular world and the inner world, the traditional political structures, and the new power that our ability uses, very smoothly and understandably. Bamboo Pole's eyebrows jumped. I feel that what you've said is not much different from my own impressions, of course, except the thing about her words being precise and the meanings plentiful. Don't blindly praise her. Doesn't she have any flaws? Or something that's different from me? He saw Luo Nan hesitate a bit, so he persisted in pressing him. Relax, I won't spill the beans. Even if I do, she's a very open-minded person. She won't mind. I don't quite understand when it comes to her flaws. Luo Nan was an honest kid in the end. He was unwilling to talk behind someone's back, regardless if it was about their shortcomings or their strengths. He pondered for quite a while before he said, "If there is something different, it would be that her knowledge points are more focused. Her pace is also much faster than yours." Bamboo Pole burst into laughter. He smacked his chin fiercely. "That's the right answer." Luo Nan didn't understand what was so funny. Bamboo Pole gave him a further step in realization. Isn't the course schedule she arranged for you based on this same principle? From morning to night, you follow it closely, step by step. It's all right. It's not particularly strict. It's nothing much now that you've mentioned it. Besides, how else can I grasp knowledge as quickly as possible? Of course you feel that it's normal because you and she are the same kind of person. You two are both bows stretched very taut. The arrow that shoots out is sharp and penetrating. It is unstoppable, but what happens in normal times? Luo Nan was a little stunned. This was the first time he heard someone compare him side by side with He Yuan. Bamboo Pole continued his assessment. There is no one in the entire branch who can keep up with Secretary He's fast tempo. She moves as if a ferocious beast is chasing her. Since entering the society, she has managed the branch's affairs, drawn up various systems, and so on. Obviously, this is good, but this is a chill society. We are not in a state of battle. Who can persevere like this day in and day out? Of 100 people, 10 will carry on as usual. 10 will persevere. 50 will thrash as if they are drowning. And 30 will drag everyone else down. Collapse will first happen from within, before the enemy even attacks. Luo Nan was seriously suspecting that Bamboo Pole was using this as a chance to roast He Yuan. As a hacker, this fellow's nature treated anything binding with skepticism. He was a standard anarchist. He never hid this during his lectures. Luo Nan really admired this aspect of Bamboo Pole. Although Bamboo Pole liked to roast others, he was the person who coordinated the best with He Yuan during the last few operations. Their tacit understanding was the highest. Well, I digress. Let's continue talking about the examples. Bamboo Pole adopted a different posture on his ergonomic chair. His expression conveyed helplessness as he said, "In a sense, people like Secretary He are extremely selfish. Don't be suspicious. I'm also talking about you. Consciously or not, you both believe that the world turns according to your tempo." The selfish Luo Nan could only listen. "I won't mention you for now. Secretary, he is actually quite a magnanimous person. She has the aura of a savior. I always feel that her methods are good for everyone. She has a sense of mission. She gives off the feeling that all the living beings under the heavens are her business. Maybe she has a lot more secrets, a lot more dangers than we know based on her family background. She likely has unspeakable difficulties, but she's a bit vapid from the perspectives of us incorrigible fellows. It makes people not interested in pursuing her. When Bamboo Pole spoke to this point, his eyes tilted over. What about you? They were silent like this for quite a while before Luo Nan asked, baffled, "Why aren't you saying anything?" Bamboo Pole raised a hands. "I'm the one who's asking. You're much more closed off than Secretary He, and Secretary He's goals are much more clear-cut than yours. Her skills are more superb, and her mind is clearer. She knows that she's lacking, so she still continues to revise and improve herself. You are different. You're 16 this year, right? You're not of age. You haven't finished maturing. Your temperament is still unfixed, and your brain is filled with fantastical thoughts. It is very tiring to use the mind to guess what you're thinking when you don't talk." Luo Nan pressed his lips into a thin line. This wasn't the first time he heard a similar evaluation, but such a situation, with Bamboo Pole using this to set off an example, was rarely seen. Luo Nan could only feel a bit apologetic for He Yuan. He was just about to speak when Bamboo Pole raised a hand. "You don't need to talk about restoring formatting theory's name, defending your mother's work of art, or similar talk." Then what could he talk about? Luo Nan was stifled in an instant. Bamboo Pole stared straight at him. He sighed only after a long while. "You don't have any other goals." Luo Nan copied Bamboo Pole's previous action of spreading his hands in helplessness. "These goals still aren't enough. What else do I need?" Bamboo Pole sighed again. "Isn't it enough?" "What else is there to analyze? We spoke a long series, and the conclusion is very clear. You and Secretary He are the same kind of person. You both live your days strung tight. Your goals are your source of stress because they are very hard to resolve, very hard to realize." Luo Nan didn't like listening to this. He asked, "Very hard to realize? As long as matters involve opposition, it all is very hard." Bamboo Pole was considerate of Luo Nan's feelings. He erased a keyword and emphasized another, "who stands in opposition to you." If the gap is too large, the more you strive, the stronger the pressure. The exception exists when you can level everything as equal. You need the ability to make the majority of people compromise, at the very least. Like Her Majesty Empress Wu. Luo Nan was silent. Her Majesty Empress Wu very rarely faces a colossus in opposition. Her #1 priority is to grow and strengthen. She does this with initiative. It takes precedence. Detouring on a few circles is nothing if she makes steps toward this. Sometimes she can even accumulate power more easily this way. Secretary He's route is very clear. She wants to consolidate the society. She wants to consolidate this group of straggling and disbanded soldiers. Her methods may be worthy of debate, but her foundation is firm, her resources are plenty, and her selfishness lacking. And you charge straight forward according to your goals. You tread through any trap, any pitfall. Fortunately, you're like a piece of stubborn iron. The usual crucial junctures are the striking of hammers. You, who is iron, make it through, while other people would have long since been smashed to mincemeat. But what if this were to continue in the future? What if Quantum Corporation, the Order of Justice, and even headquarters continue to hammer you? Or what if they just melt you in a blast furnace in one breath? Luo Nan's eyelids twitched. This was the situation he was worried about. However, it seemed the bamboo pole was shifting directions, having spoken to this point. The sense Luo Nan got was no longer that of pure analysis. Luo Nan was still unsure. He smoothed his tone and asked, "Then, Brother Bamboo Pole, what do you think I should do next?" The words had just left his mouth when he recalled that he had asked Bamboo Pole for guidance not too long ago. Bamboo Pole had refused at the time, and instead brought out the examples of Her Majesty Empress Wu and He Yuan. Sure enough, Bamboo Pole extended a hand to point at him. These words again. What's the point of asking me? I wager that with your temperament, you'll follow your nature when things come to a head, regardless of what extravagant embellishments others may say. You'll just tread straight ahead. There's a head of the hammer in front, or perhaps a blast furnace. It makes no difference to you. Luo Nan wasn't really hopeful in regard to his ability to control himself, but he believed that Bamboo Pole had spoken wrongly about one point. I don't want to tread straight or whatever. Who doesn't want to take an easier way to reach their objective? But I absolutely have no choice when things come to a head. Then how do you wind up in situations where things come to a head time and time again? Luo Nan really thought this over conscientiously. When did it begin with him always sinking to points of no return? He didn't get an answer, but there was one point that was very clear. If these sorts of days were to continue, there would be more and more times when things come to a head. The chances to make choices would grow smaller and smaller until they disappear entirely. Bamboo Pole observed Luo Nan's expression and was able to understand Luo Nan's current perplexities. Therefore, my words won't change. If I were you, I will certainly run whatever distance away. It is not because of fear or weakness. It is because one needs sufficient space as a cushion in order to grow and strengthen, in order to have the leeway to make choices. That's impossible. Luo Nan didn't even need to think before refusing. Bamboo Pole already anticipated this. His eyes didn't even blink once as he said, "Then you need a shield and you need reins. The shield gives you a chance to recover energy on the battlefield. Reins can rein in your neck when your head is heated feverishly." Luo Nan blinked. "Brother Bamboo Pole, can you speak more clearly?" Bamboo Pole rolled his eyes. "I've already spoken clear enough. Fine, what I mean is, you need to find a backer." "A backer? Who can I rely on?" Bamboo Pole looked at him like he was looking at an idiot. "Who can you rely on right now in Xia City?" "President Ouyang." "GTFO, you idiot." Luo Nan gasped, feeling that he was being treated unjustly. There were only two extraordinaries in Xia City who could shield him. What was wrong with the first answer he thought of, with Ouyang Chen? Luo Nan's mind took another turn, and only then did he realize that Bamboo Pole's examples, which came out easily, were absolutely not spoken with casual intent. "You want me to rely on Her Majesty Empress Wu." Luo Nan saw Bamboo Pole's expression and knew he had finally guessed right. However, he still didn't understand Bamboo Pole's train of thought. What's the difference between President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu? Also, am I not currently receiving their protection? The Xia City branch looking out for you is official business. Since it's official business, it is restricted to procedural processes. Correspondingly, holes in the system will certainly exist. The matter with headquarters is the best proof. The same reasoning can be used upon President Ouyang. Who made him the president? Bamboo Pole used a finger to point far in the distant air. There's something more important. There is absolutely nobody in this society this loose organization who can control you. Whenever you make a folly, there are no means to restrict you. Yuan could fit the role, but she began in the wrong position. How very awkward to be playing the secretary of a boss and the like. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. He said, "Brother Bamboo Pole, you're an anarchist. Opening and closing your mouth is under check. Is this really okay?" "At least I never caused trouble." Bamboo Pole stabbed Luo Nan in the chest with this blade. He even twisted it. "I also rarely do something stupid. Even if I do, I find a place to rest and earn a bit of extra money or something." "Idiot, I'm soliciting right now, Boss Luo." Chapter 342, Unobstructing the Liver, Part 1-3. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan and Zhu Lei had split at the school gate, and Luo Nan was riding a car home. This car was dispatched from the Xia City branch of the society. The driver was a very professional bodyguard who possessed strength out of the norm. Luo Nan wasn't really familiar with him, so they didn't really talk much on the road. Luo Nan spent far more time being lost in thought. Things were just as Bamboo Pole had said. Today, his lessons were indeed a solicitation, and the financial backer who hired him was none other than the legendary Her Majesty Empress Wu. Bamboo Pole was extremely eloquent. His persuasive and promotion skills were enough. Luo Nan really was a bit emotionally moved, but it was quite embarrassing. Luo Nan had forgotten nearly all of Bamboo Pole's words upon getting into the car. It wasn't because he didn't care. Instead, he was far too stressed. Luo Nan had constantly been a focal character since joining the society, but this was the first time he was being recruited like this. He lacked key social experience. His mind was a complete mess, filled with far too many distracting thoughts when he had encountered this matter. He really didn't know how to respond. Luo Nan's mind was such a mess that what he remembered most clearly weren't the benefits that Her Majesty Empress Wu was offering him. Instead, it was the words of comfort Bamboo Pole had given him. "Boss Luo, you're not even of age, yet you're already a complete member of society. Such matters cannot be avoided. You can consult others for their opinion. Ask many. Consult many. Don't be impatient in making a decision." Her Majesty Empress Wu went through me rather than Zhang Yingying, because that little lass is far too impatient. She wants to avoid using the emotional card to influence your decision. This argument was filled with sincerity, but Luo Nan remembered it due to a certain phrase Bamboo Pole used. The words "member of society" stabbed into his painful weak point. Luo Nan opened the window and leaned his elbow onto the frame. He felt the night wind head-on. A while passed, and his other hand drew an imaginary picture in the air. It was a tetrahedron, and he divided it into 5 levels. According to formatting theory, this was the diagram of the societal format. The diagram was clearly divided into 5 levels: student, office worker, technician, clergy, and politician. These were classifications for the different levels of resources he could control. It barely matched with external society. He still remembered expressing that solemn vow back on Ship Lanshan when he first met Zhang Yingying. He wanted to change from a student to an office worker. He needed pressure and opportunity to enter into a whole new circle. This was to fulfill the requirements for rapid ascension in society. His voice still rang in his ears. He truly did make this step, but back then, he never thought he would reach this point today where he was at a loss for what to do. He didn't believe he had made a mistake in his choice back in the very beginning. But his current passive situation couldn't be a necessary one, right? If he viewed life as a game, then the game route he took after entering society was certainly a very crappy one. Plus, there weren't any save points. He could only make his way forward with a heavy head, not daring to stop his footsteps. Luo Nan certainly had to chew the bitter consequences of his life, and right now he found himself at yet another juncture. He had to make a decision. He couldn't falter. He had to move forward. Luo Nan didn't really understand what Her Majesty Empress Wu was thinking. He couldn't make out the schemes within her mind. He could only follow Bamboo Pole's words of advice and consult others for their opinion. The first person he thought of was Xia Yingying. He had tried calling her, but she was unable to spare the time, probably handling work. He just left a message asking her to contact him later. Luo Nan could only skip to someone else for now. He used telepathy to swipe through his contact list in the hexagram. He swept through a full circle, pondering over who he should consult. He had to first skip Zhang Yingying, and he recalled that Burst had a task to do this night. What about Octopus? Luo Nan had no confidence in his language communication ability. He just expressed his thoughts as text, leaving a few friends messages of seeking advice. He had just sent the messages when the driver suddenly spoke. "Boss Luo, we've arrived at your home." Luo Nan was stunned before realizing that he had spent far too much time formulating his words. The car had already arrived at the gate of the residential area. Right now, it was already past dinner. The residents going for walks or exercising on the road were few. "Thank you, Brother Kai." Luo Nan gave a polite thanks, got off the car and headed toward his house. Halfway there, he suddenly realized that he had become accustomed to the name Boss Luo. When did that happen? He walked inside the house. He didn't see anyone in the living room, so he called out. His uncle, Mo Heihang, responded from a distance within the kitchen. "Oh, Luo Nan, wait a moment. I need to reheat the food for you." "Oh, sure." It was 8 o'clock at night. Dinner time was over quite a while ago. However, as long as Uncle was home, a portion would be left behind to allay the hunger of the appetite King Luo Nan. Luo Nan first went to wash his face. He woke himself up with cold water and he returned to the living room. Luo Shuking was already sitting on the couch, wearing a home outfit. Aunt Luo Nan hastily greeted her. He feared her the most in this home. Luo Shuking was fiddling with her wristband, head lowered. She just gave a grunt in response. Luo Nan's heart thumped as he saw this. He immediately made his way around the minefield and headed to the kitchen. But ultimately, he was too late. A cold, clear voice came from behind him. "Did Moya call yet?" She hasn't. I haven't heard from her for the past 2 days. Maybe Mo Peng. Where is he?" Luo Nan turned around. He didn't see Mo Peng, his best shield, but it didn't hurt to draw disaster away from himself. He went outside to do something wild. I just hope he will be back before 9. Luo Shuking's attention was drawn away a little, but soon she locked back onto her target. "Is there a confirmed specific time when Moya is coming back to Xia City?" The words, "coming back to Xia City," were truly worthy of praise. It was precisely like the saying, "No one knows a girl like her mother." Luo Shuking already made a conclusion. Her unfilial daughter wasn't going to come back to the house within the short return from the music festival. This time, Moya had left the house for a month, and matters had grown far too big. Luo Nan continued to play the fool. "I haven't talked to her for the past 2 days. At most, I see what her friend's circle is up to. The music festival is over. Won't she come back?" Luo Shuking raised her head and looked into her nephew's pair of eyes. In the end, she couldn't stop the feelings of doting emerging from her heart. She sighed, no longer questioning Luo Nan. Go eat dinner then. If there are no issues with the school, go adjust the time for the makeup classes. It's bad to eat meals too late, after all. Luo Nan gave a vague response and quickly sat at the dinner table. His uncle had finished slicing a piece of beef for him. He even enfolded it into a small wrap. The wrap contained beef and scallions. The texture was tough and crunchy. It was very chewy, and it went down easily. To avoid getting into a quarrel, Luo Nan half pretended to bury his head in his food, leaving no room to talk with his mouth. His uncle sat on the other side of the dinner table. Good thing you're learning martial arts, otherwise you'd be quite out of shape eating like that every day. This was a good topic. Luo Nan's mouth was too busy to talk. He just nodded his head. Aside from Mo Peng, no one in this family has ever been fat. Feed that unfilial girl to a pig if you have the skills. She won't be able to go running out into the wild then. Luo Shuqing was annoyed with being by herself in the living room. She came to the dinner table. Luo Nan's uncle immediately closed his mouth into a subtle smile, avoiding a frontal clash. Luo Shuqing knew just how impenetrable her husband was. Her gaze shifted to the best target to bully. Luo Nan hated not being able to have the entirety of the beef wrap stuffed in his mouth. He had eaten too fast, and the wrap was already in his stomach. There was now a gap, and he couldn't avoid speaking. His brain went feverish, and for some damnable reason, he spilled the beans about himself. Today, the boss of one of my friends wants me to work at her company. That's a wrap for this installment. Thank you all for watching and supporting Lord of the Stories. If you enjoyed this tale, please hit the like button, share it, and subscribe for more amazing stories. You can also explore other series updated daily in our playlists. Have a fantastic day and see you in the next episode.